I moved my entire pension into a new account without telling anyone. No warning, no discussion. That evening, I walked into the house and found my wife and daughter waiting, eyes blazing with anger. "What did you do with our money?" my wife screamed. I was standing at the ATM like an idiot. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. Instead, I placed a thick stack of papers on the table. 47 pages of bank statements. Every transaction exposed. They stared at the documents. Their anger vanished. Their faces turned pale. And for the first time, they realized I knew everything. I truly appreciate you spending your time here with me. Before we continue, I'm curious, how did this story find you? Did it appear in your recommendations come from a friend? Or have you been walking this journey with me from the start? Share in the comments how you arrived here. I read more than you know. And just a quick note, while parts of this story include fictional elements created for reflection and storytelling, the core themes, boundaries, self-respect, and financial independence are worth thinking about long after the video ends. The pharmacy clerk gave me that tight, sympathetic smile people wear when they already know you're not going to like what comes next. I had just slid my debit card across the counter for a routine refill blood pressure medication, the same one I picked up every month without thinking twice about it. $47.50. Nothing dramatic, nothing that should have mattered. She swiped the card and waited. I watched the small gray machine like it might personally apologize for whatever delay was happening. A second passed, then another. Her smile faltered. "I'm sorry, sir," she said softly. "It's been declined. Insufficient funds." The words didn't land at first. They hovered somewhere above me, detached from reality. "That can't be right," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "My paycheck deposited Friday." She glanced at the screen again, then back at me with genuine concern. "Would you like to try another card? This is the only one I have." My work jacket still carried the smell of coal dust and machine oil. I'd come straight from the mine, 12 hours underground, 950 feet below the surface, breathing recycled air through a respirator. I'd barely stopped at home, just showered and headed out. I was tired, sore, and expecting nothing more than a quick errand before dinner. I'd been using that card for 10 months now. Ever since Cynthia suggested we simplify things, direct deposit into our joint account, one central place for everything. "It'll make life easier," she'd said. I believed her. I opened my wallet and pulled out 2 20s and a 10 emergency cash I kept tucked behind my driver's license just in case. The clerk processed the payment without another word. I thanked her, picked up the prescription bag, and stepped into the October air. Cold, sharp, the kind that makes you inhale a little deeper than usual. On the drive home, the Appalachian hills were fading into dusk, purple and gray against the sky. Normally, that view helped me unwind after a shift. That night, it did nothing. My mind was doing math. $3,400. That's what my net paycheck usually was after taxes. The mortgage had been paid off for years. Utilities weren't high. We didn't live extravagantly, or at least I didn't think we did. How does a debit card decline over $47? Sleep didn't come. I lay in bed listening to Cynthia's breathing beside me, slow and steady, while numbers circled in my head like bats in a cave. Deposits, withdrawals, bills, groceries. It didn't add up. By morning, I'd made a decision. I left before sunrise, telling Cynthia I needed to stop by the credit union before work. She murmured something into her pillow and turned over. The parking lot was still half empty when I arrived. The digital clock on my dashboard read 6:45. The doors wouldn't open until 7. I sat there watching the sky brighten by degrees, feeling something tight and unfamiliar settle in my chest. Angela Brooks had handled my account for 3 years. When she unlocked the front door and saw me waiting, she smiled, but there was a flicker in her eyes, something cautious. "Morning, Mr. Whitaker. Everything all right?" "Not sure yet," I said. "My card got declined yesterday. I need to see what's going on." Inside the office smelled like paper and coffee, clean, orderly. I felt out of place in my work boots, dust still clinging to the seams. I spent my days in tunnels carved through stone. Banking offices felt like another planet. Angela typed for a moment, eyes scanning the screen. Her expression changed. "Your current balance is $147.83. The number struck me like a roof fall. My ears rang. The room felt smaller. "That's not possible," I said, but the words lacked force. My paycheck was $3,400. I did the math automatically. $3,400 minus utilities, groceries, insurance. There should have been at least $3,000 sitting there. "Can I see the transaction history?" I asked. "Last 10 months. Angela didn't hesitate. She turned to the printer. It began to whir, spitting out page after page. The sound felt louder than it should have. She gathered the stack and handed it to me. 47 pages, she said quietly. 47. Back in my truck, I didn't start the engine. I just sat there while the lot filled with morning traffic. I opened the folder and spread the first sheet across the steering wheel. December. Soul Cycle membership, $340. Sephora online purchase, $287. Venmo transfer to Derek Palmer, $500. Cash advance, $247 in the morning, $400. My stomach dropped. By page 12, my hands were shaking. Breckenridge Lodge, $2,800. Ski rental, lift tickets. Another Venmo transfer to Derek Palmer, $1,500, time-stamped 3:14 a.m. Valley View Spa, $450. Repeated, month after month. I kept flipping pages. Dining charges, online orders, beauty subscriptions, transfers, gambling apps. More cash advances in the middle of the night. Coal dust from my fingers smudged the edges of the paper. The irony wasn't lost on me. Every dollar listed there had been earned 950 feet underground. Every line item represented a shift where my back ached and my ears rang and my lungs pulled in air that wasn't meant to be breathed long term. 10 months, roughly 20 paychecks, $80,000 give or take. The balance $147.83. Gone. A knock on the window startled me. Marcus Lewis stood there, helmet under his arm, face lined with concern. "Stew you, okay?" I rolled the window down. Not sure yet. Shift started in 40 minutes. I should have been walking toward the cage that would lower us into the earth. "You need anything?" Marcus asked. Time, I thought. I need time. Just a minute. He nodded. Men who work dangerous jobs understand silence. We know when something heavy is happening behind someone's eyes. I sat there for nearly 2 hours, read every page, reread them, looked for mistakes, a decimal in the wrong place, a duplicate charge, a system error. There wasn't one. The sun climbed higher, warming the cab, but I felt cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. This wasn't anger yet. Anger is loud. This was quieter, harder, something forming under pressure. Like coal. When I finally turned the key in the ignition, I understood something without needing to say it out loud. Whoever had done this had known exactly how much I made and exactly when it hit the account. They hadn't guessed. They'd planned. I pulled out of the parking lot, not as the same man who had arrived before sunrise, but as someone who had just seen the blueprint of a lie. And once you see the numbers, you can't unsee them. Wednesday morning, I was back in the credit union parking lot before the sun had fully risen. The sky was a pale gray blue, the kind of color that comes just before daylight decides to commit. My truck idled for a moment before I cut the engine. I watched Angela Brooks unlock the front door from inside. When she glanced up and saw my Silverado parked out front, she paused, then held the door open for me. "Mr. Whitaker," she said gently. "You're here early. Need to take care of something before my shift," I replied. The building still carried the coolness of the night. The overhead lights flickered on one row at a time. Angela walked behind her desk, clicked on her lamp, and motioned for me to sit. I didn't. I stayed standing, thermos in one hand, the other resting on the back of the chair, like I needed something solid to anchor myself. "I need to open a new account," I said. "Individual, just my name on it." Her fingers hovered above the keyboard for half a heartbeat. It was subtle, but I saw it, the recognition. She'd been in banking long enough to understand what that request meant. It wasn't about convenience. It was about separation. "Checking or savings, Mr. Whitaker?" "Checking," I said, "and I need my direct deposit rerouted, starting this pay period." "That can be arranged," she said, her voice steady. "It'll take about 20 minutes. I finally sat down while she printed the paperwork. The printer hummed, spitting out form after form. I signed where she pointed. Harlan Whitaker, Harlan Whitaker, Harlan Whitaker. Each signature felt heavier than the last, like I was carving my name into something solid again after watching it dissolve. When we were finished, she slid a temporary debit card across the desk toward me. "Your permanent card will arrive in 7 to 10 business days. The payroll reroute will take effect next pay period." "Friday," I said. "That's right, Friday." She studied me, then no longer just as a customer, but as a man standing at the edge of something. "Is everything all right, Mr. Whitaker?" "It will be," I said. That was the only answer I could give. The mind felt the same the day humid air, metallic, smelled the low thunder of machinery echoing off stone. 950 feet underground, nothing changes easily. But something in me had shifted. I spoke only when necessary. I moved with precision. I drilled roof bolts and cut coal like I always had, but my mind wasn't on the work. Tommy leaned over during a break. "You feeling all right, Stu?" "You're quiet." "Just focused," I said. It wasn't focus, it was timing. 3 days until Friday. 3 days until my paycheck hit the new account. 3 days until the joint account showed exactly what was left: nothing. Every chunk of coal I sent down the conveyor belt felt like a countdown. I could feel the fuse burning slow and controlled. Thursday at lunch, Marcus found me sitting alone on the surface sandwich in hand, staring at nothing. Diesel fumes hung faintly in the cool November air. Leaves skittered across the gravel in small gusts of wind. He sat beside me without asking. "Something's eating at you." I took a bite, chewed, swallowed. "Working through something," I said. "Money trouble." The words landed closer than he realized. Marcus and I had started together 30 years ago. We'd watched each other age under fluorescent lights and rock ceilings. There wasn't much we couldn't say to one another. "Opposite," I said, more like clarity. He studied me for a second, then nodded. "I'm here if you need me." "I know." Friday morning came with frost on the windshield and something solid in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Something steadier. During my first break, I stepped aside and pulled out my phone. My fingers were rough against the glass. I opened the banking app. The notification was there. Direct deposit received. $3,400. Oakdale Credit Union. Individual account. Clean, simple, mine. I opened the joint account app next. The loading circle spun, once then settled. Balance $0. No drama, no warning message, just zero. I closed the apps and slid the phone back into my pocket. I didn't smile. I didn't feel triumph. What I felt was lighter, like setting down a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying for months. The rest of the shift passed as usual. When it ended, I showered in the bathhouse. Coal dust ran down the drain in black ribbons. I scrubbed until my skin turned pink. In the spotted mirror, I saw the same lined face, the same gray at my temples. But something behind the eyes was different, resolved. The drive home felt longer than usual. Every landmark stood out like it had been highlighted. Rosie's Diner on Main Street, where Cynthia and I used to have Sunday breakfasts. The turn toward Millbrook Reservoir, where I hadn't fished in over a year. Empty storefronts with faded for lease signs and dusty windows. The dashboard clock read 6:15 as I turned onto my street. The sky was purple now, maples stripped bare against the fading light. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. 38 years underground, breathing rock dust, listening to machinery scream at 95 decibels, feeling my back stiffen year by year. For what? So someone else could book spa days twice a month. So $16,400 could go to a boyfriend I'd never met. I turned into the driveway. Both cars were there. Cynthia's silver Honda under the porch light. Avery's Mazda angled carelessly beside it. The house itself looked still. No television glow through the curtains. No music. Waiting. I cut the engine and sat there in the quiet. A dog barked somewhere down the block. A neighbor's garage door hummed shut. Ordinary sounds. Inside my chest, something older than anger took shape. Something firm. I stepped out. Gravel crunched under my boots. The air was cold enough to sting. 3 steps up the walkway. 6 to the porch. The doorknob felt colder than the air. For a second, I just stood there, hand resting on the metal. The house felt like it was holding its breath. I turned the key. The door opened with a soft click. Cynthia stood in the middle of the living room, arms wrapped tight around herself, fingers digging into her sleeves. Avery paced in tight circles, phone clutched in her hand, jaw tight. The television was off. No background noise to soften the tension. The only sound was my boots crossing the threshold. They both looked at me at the same time. I saw it instantly. Not full understanding, but awareness. Something had shifted. Something fundamental. They'd tried their cards. They'd checked the balance. They'd seen zero. Fear flickered behind their anger. Good. I closed the door behind me, slowly, deliberately, and set my thermos on the hallway table. The house no longer felt like it was theirs. It felt like mine again. The metal lunchbox slipped from my hand and struck the hallway table with a sharp, hollow clang that bounced off the walls. The sound carried through the house like a warning bell. I didn't need to look toward the living room to know they were watching me. I could feel it, the tension stretched tight between us. Thin as wire, Cynthia sat rigid on the edge of the couch, knees together, fingers locked so tightly her knuckles were white. Avery stood beside her, pacing a short line in front of the coffee table, her phone clutched in her hand, like evidence she couldn't wait to present. Both of them were coiled, ready to spring. I shrugged out of my navy Oakdale mining jacket and hung it on the hook by the door. The fabric was stiff with dried sweat and coal dust. My hands were still black around the cuticles, grime packed deep in the lines of my skin. The cuffs of my jeans were stained dark from kneeling in slurry and rock. I'd been underground for 12 hours, breathing air that tasted like rubber and metal through a respirator. I carried the scent of sulfur diesel and damp earth with me. Cynthia stood first. Her yoga pants were immaculate, her tunic crisp and freshly pressed. Makeup perfect, not a smudge. Her lips were painted a careful shade of rose that didn't belong anywhere near the word mine. Avery's hair was still damp from a shower, falling in soft waves around her shoulders. I could smell vanilla body wash from across the room. She wore a coordinated athleisure set that probably cost more than my steel toe boots. Behind them, the living room looked like a catalog spread. The Peloton bike sat by the window, $2,400. According to a statement, I'd once glimpsed its seat collecting a thin layer of dust. The designer ergonomic chair leaned against the wall, still wrapped in plastic, $1,400 and never used. The 70-inch flat-screen TV hung above the fireplace like an altar. On the coffee table, Avery's makeup lay scattered in small containers with names I couldn't pronounce. Cynthia's voice cut through the air. "What the hell did you do to the joint account?" Her voice trembled despite the anger. I stood at the bank like an idiot. "Are you trying to cut me and our daughter off?" Avery stepped forward and shoved her phone toward me. The screen glowed with the banking app, balance $0. "Dad, what is this?" she demanded. "Where's the money?" I didn't answer. I walked past them into the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed steadily. The wall clock ticked louder than usual. I filled a glass with water and drank it slowly, letting the cold settle my throat. I remembered sitting at this same table months ago when Cynthia had taken my hand and said, "We're a family now. Families share everything." I'd believed her. Believed that sharing meant partnership, not extraction. "I got a new card," I said finally. Cynthia's face drained of color. "What?" "A new card, new account." I placed the glass down carefully. "My paycheck goes there now." The silence that followed felt like the split second before a roof collapse when timber creaks and you know you've got seconds to move. 5 seconds. The clock ticked. The refrigerator kicked on. Then everything detonated. "That's a joint account." Cynthia's voice cracked sharp and high. "We agreed. You promised we'd share everything." "No," I said calmly. "It isn't." "What are you even saying?" Avery shouted. "You can't just—" "I can," I replied, meeting her eyes. And I did. Cynthia stepped closer, lowering her voice into something cold and dangerous. "Harlan, we have bills. We have a life. You can't just take the money and—" "I've been paying for your life," I said evenly. "For 18 months. I've covered everything." "That's what families do," Cynthia snapped. "That's what marriage is." I almost laughed at the word marriage. Instead, I walked to the window and looked outside. The driveway was orderly. Cynthia's silver Honda CR-V gleamed under the porch light, barely 3 years old. 16,300 miles on the odometer the last time I checked. Avery's cherry red Mazda 3 sat beside it, under 2 years old, just over 11,000 miles. Both waxed, maintained. Garaged. My Silverado sat behind them. 208,000 miles. Rust creeping along the wheel wells. A dent in the tailgate from a loading dock accident years back. The driver's seat patched with duct tape. "You want to talk about family?" I said quietly, still looking out the glass. "We'll talk about it tomorrow." "Tomorrow," Cynthia shrieked. "No! We're not waiting. We're talking now." I turned back toward them. "I start at 5 in the morning. I've been underground for 12 hours. I'm going to bed. Harlan, I'm being clear." I looked at both of them. "Tomorrow, when I can show you the numbers." Avery's mouth opened, then closed. Cynthia's eyes scanned my face, searching for hesitation, for guilt, for weakness. She wouldn't find any. I walked toward the stairs. My boots struck the hardwood with slow, deliberate weight. My shoulder throbbed where I'd braced a hydraulic jack all afternoon. My knees complained climbing each step. At the bottom of the staircase, I paused. "Numbers," I repeated. "Tomorrow." I climbed the rest of the way and entered the bedroom. I shut the door behind me. The latch clicked softly, final. Downstairs, their voices rose almost immediately. Cynthia sharp and panicked, Avery higher and furious. The words blurred into background noise. After years underground, you learn how to tune out chaos. The ventilation fans in the mine roar constantly. If you listened to every sound, you'd go insane. I sat on the edge of the bed and unlaced my boots, set them side by side on the floor, neat and even. I lay back and stared at the ceiling. 47 pages. 47. Tomorrow I would spread them across the kitchen table. I would point to every charge, every transfer, every timestamp at 2 in the morning. Tomorrow they would see what I saw in that truck. Tomorrow the numbers would speak. Tomorrow they would understand that this wasn't about cruelty. It was about math, and math doesn't lie. Before I open that 47-page folder and walk them through every single line item, I want to hear from you. How much do you think disappeared over 10 months, 20,000, 50,000, or more? Drop your guess in the comments below, so I know you're still following this story. And a quick note, parts of this narrative include constructed elements meant to illustrate larger lessons about boundaries and accountability. If this content doesn't feel right for you, you're welcome to step away here. They didn't let me sleep. Around 8 o'clock, I heard the staircase creak, slow, cautious footsteps climbing one at a time. I was lying on top of the covers, still dressed in my jeans and flannel shirt, staring at the faint brown water stain spreading across the bedroom ceiling. The house had gone quiet half an hour earlier. I had heard a door slam, Avery's most likely, followed by the strained silence of two people whispering too fast downstairs. Then nothing, until the knock. Soft, almost careful. Harlan Cynthia's voice came through the door, muffled and thinner than usual. "We need to talk, please." I sat up, swung my legs over the side of the bed, and clicked on the lamp. The light filled the room in a dull yellow glow. "All right," I said. When I opened the door, they were both standing in the hallway like they'd rehearsed it. Cynthia's makeup had smudged beneath her eyes, leaving faint gray shadows. Avery's arms were folded tight across her chest, her jaw clenched hard enough to ache. "You can't just—" Cynthia began, her voice wavering. "We need to discuss this like adults." "Okay," I replied evenly. "Kitchen." We moved downstairs without another word. The kitchen felt colder than the rest of the house. We took our seats the way adversaries do, Cynthia and Avery on one side of the table, me on the other. The fluorescent light above us buzzed faintly, casting everything in a flat, unforgiving glare. Cynthia went first. "If you have a problem with how I manage the money, you should say something." She said, her tone defensive but strained. Instead of this, ambush. "I did say something," I answered, more than once. "You told me not to worry about it." "Because I was handling it," she shot back. "Do you think running a household is free?" "No," I said calmly, "but I think it costs less than what's missing." I pushed my chair back. "I'll be right back." Outside, the October air had turned sharp and still. My breath came out in small clouds as I crossed the driveway toward the Silverado. The truck's metal felt cold under my hand. I opened the passenger door and reached under the seat, pulling out the manila folder I'd left there. 47 pages. Standard printer paper folded once across the middle. Evidence. When I stepped back into the kitchen, they were whispering urgently. They stopped the second they saw the folder in my hand. I placed it on the table with a deliberate thump. 10 months of statements, I said. December through September. Want to go through them together. Cynthia stared at the folder like it might snap at her. "I don't need to review my own transactions," she muttered. "Then let me highlight a few." I opened the folder and slid the first page across to her. December 18th, SoulCycle Oakdale, membership fee, $340. Another page. December 19th, Sephora Online, $287. Another. December 22nd, Venmo transfer, Derek Palmer, $500. Avery's face lost color. I continued pulling pages and laying them out across the table like cards in a game nobody wanted to play. January 15th, Breckenridge Mountain Lodge, $2,800. Ski rentals, $650. Lift tickets, $420. "That was a mother-daughter bonding trip," Cynthia snapped, voice breaking. "We needed that trip." "I worked doubles that week," I said. "You told me the money was for emergency repairs on the house." I didn't pause. February 3rd, Valley View Spa, $450. February 17th, $450. March 3rd, $450. I tapped the stack lightly. "That's $1,350 for 3 spa visits, Cynthia. My $47 blood pressure prescription got declined." Avery tried to redirect the conversation. "Dad, you're cherry-picking. You're not showing groceries or normal expenses." I pulled another page forward. Whole Foods, average $420 per week. That's $1,680 a month for 3 people. I looked at her directly. "Before you moved in, Cynthia and I spent $400 a month total." I pushed forward a stack of pages marked with yellow highlighter. "These," I said, "are the transfers to Derek Palmer, 18 of them, over 6 months." I read the amounts aloud. $500, $800, $1,200, $600, $1,500. I set the stack down. Total $16,400. Who is Derek Palmer? Avery? Her jaw tightened further. That's my business. It became my business when you used my money. Cynthia turned toward her sharply. Who the hell is Derek? He's my boyfriend, Avery shot back. He needed help. Help with what I asked quietly. 3 of these transfers happened between 2 and 4 in the morning. I pulled out the final sheet, the one I'd written by hand. Columns carefully aligned. Totals double-checked. Total deposits over 10 months, $80,000. Current balance, $147.83. Total spent, $79,852.17. The numbers sat between us. Breakdown 1 continued. Gambling and betting apps, $6,200. Transfers to Derek Palmer, $16,400. Shopping, clothing, beauty, $24,800. Dining and entertainment, $12,600. Spa and fitness, $8,950. Ski trip and other travel, $10,900. I looked down at my own handwriting. Hours I worked underground during that time, $2,080. Value per hour of my body, $38.42. I slid the paper into the center of the table. Every dollar on that list I earned 950 feet below ground, breathing coal dust, losing my hearing, wearing my back down. The kitchen felt smaller. This is what my sacrifice paid for, I said. Ski trips I wasn't invited to, a boyfriend I didn't know existed, spa days while I worked overtime. Cynthia began to cry. You're making me sound like a monster. I'm reading numbers, I replied evenly. If they sound like something to you, I didn't put that meaning there. Avery stood abruptly, chair scraping against the tile. This is ridiculous. Parents have a responsibility to support their children. You're 26, I said, and you're not my daughter. The words landed hard. Silence swallowed the room. You're Cynthia's daughter, I continued. I welcomed you here, but that doesn't make me an ATM. Cynthia's tone shifted, desperation creeping in. Okay, we made mistakes. We overspent. We can fix this. We'll get jobs. We'll pay you back. You already have a job, I said. Part-time at the library. Where does that paycheck go? She didn't answer. Into your personal checking account, I said. The one I don't have access to. Funny how that works. Cynthia gathered the scattered pages with shaking hands, stacking them, as if putting them out of sight might undo them. Avery stormed upstairs, her footsteps heavy and furious. The kitchen fell quiet. Only the refrigerator hummed, the same refrigerator I'd paid off 5 years ago. I stayed seated for a moment longer, looking at the empty chairs across from me. Tomorrow I would tell them what happened next. Tonight the numbers had already said enough. Before I reveal what I decided to do after laying out all 47 pages, I want to hear from you. Based on those totals, how much do you think $79,000 really costs a man who earns it underground? Drop your thoughts below, so I know you're still walking through this with me. And one more thing, portions of this story include constructed elements designed to illustrate broader lessons about accountability and boundaries. If this content isn't right for you, you're free to step away here. Tomorrow we move forward. Saturday morning arrived wrapped in frost and something steadier inside my chest. I woke at 6 without an alarm. No voices downstairs, no tension humming through the walls. Just the quiet click of the furnace kicking on and the faint creak of the house settling against the cold. I showered, scrubbing away the last of yesterday's coal dust, and dressed in clean jeans and a flannel shirt that didn't carry the smell of diesel or damp stone. When I came downstairs, the kitchen was empty. I reached into the back of the cupboard and pulled out the bag of coffee I'd bought 3 days earlier with money from my new account. I'd tucked it behind the cereal boxes so it wouldn't disappear into someone else's routine. I ground the beans, slowly listening to the burr grinder hum. The smell rose rich and dark, filling the kitchen. By 7:30, I was seated at the kitchen table with a steaming mug, a blank spiral notebook, and a pen. The table had been wiped clean. The 47 pages were gone. Cynthia must have taken them upstairs last night. In their place lay a single sheet of white paper, blank and waiting. Footsteps sounded from above. Cynthia came down first, one hand trailing the banister. Avery followed a few minutes later. Neither of them looked put together. No makeup. Hair unbrushed. Eyes swollen and red from crying or arguing or both. Cynthia stopped at the foot of the stairs. "Harlan," she said, voice hoarse. "Can we talk about this, like reasonable adults?" "That's why I'm here," I answered. They took their seats across from me. Same chairs as the night before. Same distance. But something had shifted. The room felt less explosive and more fragile. Cynthia folded her hands together on the table. "Last night was overwhelming," she said carefully. "But we're a family. We can work through this. We can, I replied, under new terms. Her face tightened at that word. Terms. Yes, I said, because what we had before didn't work. I picked up the pen and began writing as I spoke. First, I said, keeping my voice steady, the situation is worse than the $80,000. Cynthia's eyes flickered. What do you mean? Credit card debt, I said. How much? She hesitated. I'm not asking as your husband, I clarified. I'm asking as someone whose name might be attached to those accounts. Her voice dropped to a whisper. About 22,000. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I simply wrote it down. Joint account drained $80,000. Credit card debt, $22,000. Total financial damage, $102,000. The number sat there in blue ink, undeniable. Avery's voice sharpened. We didn't mean for it to get that bad. Intention doesn't change the outcome, I said. I turned the notebook so they could see the figures. Then I continued writing. Here are your options, I said. Cynthia's breathing grew shallow. Option 1, you stay here. But if you stay, you pay $1,100 a month in rent. That covers utilities. You buy your own groceries. You don't access my accounts. You handle your own debts. And you have 21 days to decide. I paused long enough for the weight of it to settle. Option 2, you leave. You find your own place. You manage your own finances. You receive no further support from me. I tapped the notebook lightly. Today is day 1. The clock starts now. Avery shot upright in her chair. Rent, she burst out. You want us to pay rent in your own house. My house, I corrected calmly. Paid off 8 years before I met your mother. But we live here, she said. This is our home. No, I replied evenly. You're guests. Guests who overstayed. Cynthia shifted tactics. Harlan, you can't charge rent to your own wife. That's not how marriage works. You're right, I said. In a healthy marriage, one person doesn't drain $80,000 from the other without discussion. She flinched at that. $1,100, I continued, is below market rate. A 2-bedroom apartment in Oakdale rents for $1,400, plus utilities, plus security deposit. I looked at both of them. I'm offering below market rent in a house that's paid off. That's not cruelty. It's a business arrangement. You're treating us like tenants, Cynthia said, her voice cracking. I'm treating you like adults who need to take responsibility. Avery turned toward her mother, panic edging into her voice. Mom, can we even afford $1,100? Cynthia swallowed. I make $900 a month at the library. Then Avery contributes, I said. Or you both find additional work. Or you choose option 2. For a moment, silence settled over the table. An old memory surfaced sharp and clear. My father, also a miner, dead at 58 from black lung. I remembered standing in that hospital room, the air thick with disinfectant, tubes running from his arms, his breathing shallow and labored. Son, he'd said, voice rasping, family means you lift each other up. But lifting someone up and being bled dry, those are 2 different things. Don't let anyone mistake your kindness for weakness. I blinked and returned to the kitchen. I've spent my whole life carrying weight, I said quietly. Underground, I carry roof bolts, drill steel, the responsibility of keeping my crew alive. I thought carrying a family would be different, lighter, but it hasn't been. I met Cynthia's eyes. You didn't treat me like family. You treated me like a resource, something to extract from, like a coal seam. She began to cry again. That's not fair, she insisted weakly. I cooked. I cleaned. Did you? I asked calmly. When was the last time you cooked a meal that wasn't takeout charged to my card? Her mouth opened, closed. No answer. I slid the notebook further across the table. 21 days, I repeated. 3 weeks. Stay if you pay. Leave if you don't. The free ride is over. Avery stood abruptly. This is insane, she snapped. I'm calling Grandma. She grabbed her phone and rushed upstairs, her footsteps heavy against the wood. I didn't stop her. Cynthia remained seated, staring down at the numbers as if they might rearrange themselves into something softer. You're really doing this, she said finally. I am. What if we can't decide in 21 days? Then I'll decide for you. She picked up the notebook slowly, like it weighed far more than paper and ink. For her, maybe it did. Maybe it was the first boundary she'd ever been forced to acknowledge. She carried it upstairs without another word. The house fell quiet again. I stood and poured myself another cup of coffee from the bag I'd bought with my own money, in my own kitchen, under my own terms. I lifted the mug and took a long sip. For 10 months, everything had tasted bitter. This didn't. It tasted like control. It tasted like consequence. It tasted like choice. The first 3 days after I laid down the terms felt like living with polite strangers who were waiting for something to happen. No shouting, no slammed doors, just careful movements, measured tones, and eyes that tracked me whenever I entered a room. The air in the house felt staged, like we were all actors waiting for our next cue. Day 3 was Monday. I was in the kitchen before sunrise, cooking breakfast, 2 eggs toast, black coffee. Nothing elaborate. My hands moved automatically, muscle memory, from 38 years of eating before dawn shifts. Crack the eggs against the rim. Let them fall clean into the skillet. Listen to the soft sizzle as they hit hot butter. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. Avery. Early for her. She usually didn't surface until 10. That alone told me something. She'd put effort in. Mascara, lipstick, hair brushed smooth, actual jeans instead of pajama shorts. The attempt at normalcy was almost admirable. "Morning, Dad," she said brightly. Too brightly. "Sleep okay?" "Fine." I didn't turn. I flipped the eggs carefully, watching the whites firm around the edges. She leaned against the counter like she was posing for a lifestyle ad. "Listen, about Friday. Maybe we just got off on the wrong foot." I slid the toast onto a plate. "We didn't start wrong," I said calmly. "We just kept walking in the wrong direction." She studied my face, searching for softness. "I mean, I could get a job," she said quickly. "I was planning to anyway." "That's smart." She hesitated, recalibrating. "So maybe you could reconsider the rent thing." "No." One word, solid, closed. Her expression faltered. For a second, she looked almost like a kid again. Then the mask returned. She stood there another moment, then turned and went back upstairs. The door shut. Not quite a slam, but not gentle either. Day 4. Tuesday brought a different strategy. I walked in at 6:30 to a smell I hadn't experienced in months, real food cooking. Beef stew, mashed potatoes, green beans sautéed with garlic. The scent hit me in the doorway, warm and deliberate. The table was set with plates, silverware, and cloth napkins I hadn't seen since the holidays. There was even a candle in the center unlit, but waiting. Cynthia stood by the stove, wooden spoon in hand. "I made dinner," she said, smiling carefully. "Your favorites. I thought we could eat together, like a family." For half a heartbeat, I almost said yes. The stew smelled good. It had been a long time since anyone cooked something that wasn't takeout. For a split second, I could have pretended we were rewinding to a version of this house that never existed. Then I remembered the 47 pages. "I already ate," I said. It wasn't true, but I made enough for... I'm heading out to the workshop. I walked past the table, past the careful attempt at reconciliation, and out the back door. In the workshop, I made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and turned on the radio. Classic rock. Leonard Skynerd's Simple Man drifted through the space. I sat on a stool, chewing slowly. The sandwich tasted better than the stew would have. Day 5. Wednesday, she tried logic. I was at the kitchen table reading the classified section of the local paper. Not because I needed to move, but because I was curious what $800 got you in Oakdale. Not much. Cynthia entered, dressed for an interview, blouse slacks, low heels. "Harlan," she began carefully. "I applied for full-time jobs. I have an interview with the school district." I nodded once. "Good. That means we're trying," she said. "We're making an effort. I'm glad you're taking responsibility." She sat across from me, hands folded like she was presenting a proposal. "So maybe we could adjust the timeline. 21 days isn't enough. It's 3 weeks," I said. "Plenty of time to decide whether to pay or leave." "But if..." "Cynthia." I looked up and held her gaze. "The terms aren't negotiable." She stared at me for a long moment, then stood and walked away without another word. Day 6. Thursday, the perspective shifted underground. 950 feet down, the crew room smelled like diesel sweat and stale coffee. The ventilation fans hummed overhead. Someone's drill was grinding in the distance. Marcus sat beside me on the metal bench. Bologna sandwiches, thermoses that had gone lukewarm. "Heard your house has been lively," he said casually. "Small town," I replied. "News travels. You holding up. Better than I have in months." He nodded slowly. "My ex tried something similar," he said after a minute. "Not 80 grand, maybe 10 or 12. Same pattern though. Spend it, deny it, make me feel guilty for noticing." "How'd you handle it?" I stopped apologizing for respecting myself. That landed deeper than he knew. "You're doing the right thing, Stu," he added. "Don't let anyone twist it on you." I nodded. "Down there under that much rock, you learn the value of structural integrity. A weak beam collapses." Day 7. Friday evening, I hit my limit on shared space. I opened the refrigerator. Cold air spilled out bright white light, washing over the shelves. The contents looked disorganized, half-empty containers, condiment bottles, leftovers, and plastic. My Chinese leftovers from Wednesday were gone. My milk half empty, It had been nearly full that morning, my deli turkey package torn open, half the slices missing. I stood there staring at it, the refrigerator humming steadily. Decision made. I went out to the workshop, grabbed masking tape and a black Sharpie, came back inside, tore off strips of tape, wrote in thick block letters, "Harlan's do not touch." I labeled everything that belonged to me. Milk carton, egg carton 6 left, deli turkey, leftover pizza wrapped in foil, orange juice, butter. I pressed each label firmly into place. Clear, visible, undeniable. Avery came down the stairs just as I was finishing. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Labeling my food. This is insane. Who labels food in their own fridge? Someone who's tired of it disappearing." She pulled out her phone and snapped a photo. The camera shutter sounded exaggerated in the quiet kitchen. "This is crazy. People need to see this." "Go ahead." Later that night, she posted the picture online. I didn't see it. Cynthia told me the next morning, tight with embarrassment. The caption framed me as toxic, controlling, petty. She expected sympathy. The comments didn't go that way. "He's right. You're 26, buy your own groceries." Sounds like he's setting boundaries. Respect his stuff. Your dad's protecting what he pays for. If my kid was eating my food without asking, I'd do the same. You're the problem, not him. Within 2 hours, the post was gone. That weekend, the house shifted again. Whispered conversations cut off when I entered rooms. Doors closed softly but deliberately. Cynthia made 3 phone calls behind closed doors. I heard her voice through the bedroom wall, low, urgent. "Mom, please." He won't listen. I didn't ask questions. I didn't argue. I let the clock keep ticking. By Sunday night, I could feel it. The strategy was changing. The negotiation attempts had failed. The charm offensive had collapsed. Public shaming had backfired. Monday morning would bring reinforcements. Someone older. Someone who believed she could step in and fix this by force of personality or guilt. I didn't know exactly what she would say, but I knew one thing. The diplomacy phase was over. Day 8 delivered a Lincoln Continental to my driveway and a different kind of confrontation to my front door. I pulled in at 5:45 p.m., shoulders aching from a 12-hour shift, coal dust still clinging to my collar and cuffs. The Silverado's engine rumbled down into silence, and that's when I saw it. Silver, polished, immaculate. A 2015 Lincoln Continental sitting in my driveway like it owned the place. I didn't need to check the plates to know who it belonged to. Dorothy Hayes, Cynthia's mother. I'd met her twice. Once at our wedding, where she'd evaluated me the way a jeweler inspects a flawed stone. And once at Thanksgiving 2 years ago, where she'd asked me within earshot of half the table if I had ever considered advancing beyond manual labor. So, this was the next tactic. Reinforcements. I stayed in my truck a moment longer, hands resting on the steering wheel. The engine ticked as it cooled. I let my breathing steady. Let the fatigue settle into something manageable. Then I stepped out. When I walked inside, they were arranged like a stage tableau. Dorothy in my reading chair, the one by the window, the one I'd owned for 15 years. Cynthia on the couch. Avery perched on the armrest, chin lifted just slightly. They'd rehearsed this. Dorothy stood as I entered, formal, controlled. "Harlan," she said, "we need to have a conversation." I set my lunchbox on the hallway table. "Dorothy, didn't expect you." "I came as soon as I heard what was happening," she replied smoothly. "My daughter called me in tears. I had to come." I didn't move further into the room. I stayed near the doorway. Open exit behind me, no triangulation. "Cynthia tells me you've made some unilateral decisions regarding finances." "I made decisions about my finances," I said. Her lips thinned. "She's your wife, Harlan. In a marriage, money is shared. Shared means both people have a voice. That's not what happened." Dorothy adjusted her glasses and looked me over slowly. Coal dust. Dirt beneath my nails. Work boots leaving faint prints on hardwood she'd probably mentally labeled as inferior flooring. "Cynthia's father," she said carefully, "was a true provider. He never questioned what his wife required. He never made her feel small for spending." A pause. "Of course," she added, "he was an executive, regional manager, not manual labor." There it was, the hierarchy. Coal miner equals lesser man. Blue collar equals insufficient. My jaw tightened, but I didn't rise to it. Dorothy continued, voice soft and surgical. "Perhaps you don't fully understand how families at a certain level operate. Women have social expectations, appearances to maintain, obligations. I worked 38 years underground so my wife could go to the spa. I asked, 'Don't be dramatic,' she replied lightly. 'Cynthia deserves modest luxuries. $80,000 isn't modest.' She waved her hand dismissively. Numbers can be twisted. I'm certain it's not as dramatic as you make it sound. Cynthia leaned forward, lines clearly memorized. Harlan with Mom here, maybe we can calmly. No. Dorothy blinked. Excuse me. No, I repeated. I'm not renegotiating. The terms remain. She laughed sharp and humorless. You're being unreasonable, stubborn, just like Cynthia said. She's entitled to her opinion. Without another word, I walked past them up the stairs and into my bedroom, closed the door. Tuesday evening, I stayed out in the workshop longer than usual. The October air was mild, nearly 60 degrees, so I left the window cracked open. That's when I heard them. The kitchen window must have been open too. Their voices drifted clearly across the yard. Dorothy first, calm, directive. Listen to me carefully, Cynthia. Men like Harlan use money as leverage. It's how they maintain control. He showed me the statement Cynthia said weakly. Everything was there. That's irrelevant, Dorothy cut in. Don't let him see any more bills. Keep accounts separate. He'll ask. Then tell him you handled it. Your father never knew about my casino trips. What he didn't know didn't hurt him. There was a pause. Mom, that's survival, Dorothy said firmly. You manage information in a marriage. I stood motionless in the workshop, every word landing exactly where it needed to. Disappointed, but not surprised. So that was the blueprint. Wednesday, day 10, they staged another intervention. I walked in from work and found all three waiting in the living room again. Dorothy spoke first. Harlan, sit down. We're resolving this today. There's nothing to resolve, I said. You have 11 days left. This rent proposal is absurd, Dorothy snapped. Cynthia is your wife. Wives do not pay rent. Wives don't drain $80,000 either, I replied calmly. Yet here we are. Dorothy inhaled sharply. How dare you call my daughter a thief? What would you call taking $80,000 without permission? Marriage, she shot back. I call it marriage. I turned to Cynthia. Is that what you believe? That marriage means I earn and you spend without limits. She couldn't meet my eyes. I faced Dorothy again. You're welcome to stay as a guest, but you don't make decisions in my home. Your home. Dorothy's voice rose. Cynthia lives here. That makes it her home. My name is on the deed, I said evenly. The mortgage has been paid off for 8 years. It's my house. Dorothy leaned towards Cynthia, stage whispering loudly enough for me to hear. See, I told you. He's a controller. They always resort to ownership. I didn't respond. I walked back out to the workshop and spent the evening installing a deadbolt on the inside of my bedroom door. If boundaries were going to be challenged, they needed reinforcement. That night I lay in bed listening to the house settle. Dorothy's words echoed differently now. Your father never knew about my casino trips. Cynthia's father, dead 5 years ago. Heart attack at 62. Very stressed toward the end, Cynthia had once said. The same age I was now. I stared at the ceiling and wondered, had he known? Had he suspected? Had he sat awake at night, running numbers in his head the way I had? Or had he lived in the dark, never seeing the statements, never confronting the truth? Stress doesn't just come from what you know. Sometimes it comes from what you sense but can't prove. I turned onto my side and looked at the newly installed deadbolt. For months I'd been living inside a fog of numbers that didn't add up. Now I had clarity. Clarity might not fix everything, but it might keep me alive. I wouldn't spend the rest of my years guessing. I knew the figures. I knew the pattern, and I wasn't going back underground literally or figuratively blind again. Day 11, 950 feet underground. That's when my body decided to remind me it wasn't made of coal. It was 10:30 in the morning. I was operating the continuous miner, a machine that weighed 20 tons and chewed coal from the wall like a mechanical monster. Set the machine, advance, cut, retreat, repeat. I'd done it 10,000 times over 38 years. The noise was constant, 95 decibels. You wore hearing protection or you went deaf. The air was thick, 88 degrees humid, dusty even with the ventilation fans running. I had my respirator on, breathing filtered air that tasted like rubber and metal. Then my chest tightened. Not a sharp pain. Pressure, like someone had wrapped a vise around my ribs and was turning the handle. My left arm went numb. I couldn't catch my breath, and down here that was saying something. The edges of my vision blurred. My mind went straight to one place: heart attack. Just like Cynthia's father. I'm 62, black lung in my chest. This is it. My hand slipped from the control panel. The machine ground to a stop. Marcus was working 20 feet away. He noticed immediately. He started toward me. I leaned against the machine, one hand pressed to my chest. The respirator fogged with my rapid breathing. Marcus grabbed the radio. Surface, this is Lewis. Need a medic to Section 7B. Man down. They got me to the surface. Marcus and Ray half carried me to the cage, the elevator that hauled us up and down the shaft. 950 feet. 3 minutes that felt like 30. My vision spun, my heart hammered. When we reached the top, the October sun hit my eyes. Too bright. Overwhelming. The mind medic was waiting with his kit. "Mr. Whitaker, where's your pain?" "A chest, left arm, can't breathe." He strapped the blood pressure cuff on my arm, pumped it up, watched the gauge. 165/98. That's high. Pulse oximeter on my finger. 96% oxygen. That's acceptable, but lower than I'd like on the surface. Heart rate monitor. 118 beats per minute, elevated. Any cardiac history. My father died at 58. Heart attack. "We need to get you to the ER now." Marcus drove me to Oakdale General. I didn't argue. The tightness in my chest had eased, but the fear hadn't. The ER was fluorescent bright and smelled like disinfectant. They took me straight back. A nurse hooked me up to monitors. Wires everywhere. Beeping machines. The doctor was a woman in her 50s, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. "Dr. Reynolds," her badge said. "Mr. Whitaker, we're going to run an EKG draw blood to check for troponin. That's a marker for heart damage, and keep you under observation for a few hours." "As how long?" 3 hours minimum, if anything looks concerning longer. The EKG took 10 minutes. 12 leads stuck to my chest. The machine printed out a long strip of paper with jagged lines. Blood draw, 2 vials. Then waiting. Marcus sat in the chair beside the bed. "Called the mine, told them you're out for the rest of the week." "I don't need a week." "Doctor's orders, Stu. You heard her." 3 hours passed. Dr. Reynolds came back with a clipboard. "Your EKG is normal. Troponin levels are negative. No signs of heart attack." Relief flooded through me. "However," she continued, "your blood pressure is dangerously high. 165/98 is pre-hypertensive crisis territory. Your stress response is significantly elevated. What I'm seeing is consistent with a severe anxiety attack." "I've never had anxiety." "You've never had someone drain your bank account before, either," Marcus muttered. Dr. Reynolds looked at me over her glasses. "Mr. Whitaker, anxiety attacks and heart attacks share almost identical symptoms. Chest pain, arm, numbness, shortness of breath. Your body was screaming at you, and at 62 with your work history and family cardiac history, we take this very seriously." She wrote on her prescription pad, "I'm prescribing blood pressure medication. Take it daily. I'm also referring you to a cardiologist for a stress test within 2 weeks, and I'm ordering you to take at least 2 days off work. Your body needs rest. What if it happens again? If it happens again, you call 911 immediately. Don't wait. Don't drive yourself. Call." She paused at the door. "And Mr. Whitaker, whatever's causing this level of stress in your life, you need to fix it. Because next time, it might not be anxiety. It might be the real thing." Marcus drove me home. It was nearly 6 o'clock. The sun was setting. When I walked inside, Avery was in the living room. She looked up, saw my face. I must have looked terrible, pale, hollow, the hospital wristband still on. "Dad," her voice changed. "What happened? Where were you?" "Hospital, I'm fine." "You are not fine. You were at the hospital. For what?" I sat down on the couch, more like collapsed. Thought I was having a heart attack. Wasn't, just stress. She sat next to me, closer than she'd been in weeks. "Dad, you're scaring me. Are you okay? Did they say you're okay?" For a moment, I saw her differently. Not the 26-year-old who'd spent $16,000 of my money on her boyfriend, but the 8-year-old I'd met the day I married Cynthia, the little girl who'd asked to go fishing with Uncle Harlan, the kid who'd said, "When I grow up, I want to be strong like you." She started crying. It looked real. "Dad, please, I don't want to lose you." "Daddy." She hadn't called me that in years. My hand moved toward my wallet. Instinct. The urge to fix things, to provide, to protect. Then the image flashed in my mind. 47 pages spread across the kitchen table. The numbers. $80,000, $16,400 to Derek Palmer. Transfers at 2:47 in the morning. The social media post. The photo of my labeled food in the fridge. The mocking caption. My hand stopped, pulled back. "I'm okay, Avery. Thank you for asking." "I'm scared," she said. "About everything. The 21 days, finding a place, how we'll afford. You should have been scared 10 months ago, before the first transfer to Derek." Her face changed. She realized I wasn't going to soften. My phone rang. "Marcus, Stu just heard. Tommy got hurt. Section 5, tunnel, roof bolt failed, rock fell on his leg. They're airlifting him to Pittsburgh. How bad? Broken femur, maybe worse. He's only 54, Stu, been on our crew 20 years. Jesus! That could have been any of us in that tunnel today. Could have been you this morning. I hung up, sat in silence. Tommy was 54, broken leg, maybe career ending, 20 years in the mine. What did he have to show for it? A body that only worked when it felt like it. Maybe a pension if he made it to 62. I was 62, gave 38 years, black lung in my chest, hearing aids in my ears, scars on my hands, and today, a hospital wristband. Dr. Reynolds' words echoed, "Next time, it might be the real thing." All that sacrifice. For what? So my wife could go to spas, so my stepdaughter could fund her gambling boyfriend. That night, I didn't install any new locks. I didn't write any new terms. I just sat in the workshop until midnight, sanding a piece of pine that didn't need sanding. My hands knew what to do when my mind couldn't settle. Tommy would survive his injury. I'd survive mine. But we'd both been reminded time isn't infinite, and I wouldn't spend what I had left being a coal seam for someone to mine. Day 12. But if I'm honest, it felt like the first day in years. I had been inside my own home without it being Christmas, a snowstorm, or a medical emergency. Friday, day 11. I hadn't gone to work. Doctor's orders. Doctor. Reynolds had adjusted my blood pressure medication and told me in a tone that didn't invite argument to take a day and let my system calm down. I sat on the porch that morning with a mug of coffee and watched frost melt off the railing as the sun rose. No engines, no drills, no shouting underground. Just wine moving through the trees and the slow rhythm of my own breathing. Cynthia and Avery stayed out of my way. The house was quiet in a way that didn't feel tense. It felt suspended, like everyone understood something fragile had cracked and needed space. By Saturday morning, I felt steady, clear-headed. The tight band that had wrapped around my chest for months was gone. My hands no longer trembled when I held my coffee. 10 days down, 11 to go. The math was simple. The conversations weren't. It was 9 o'clock when I stepped into the workshop. The air smelled faintly of sawdust and motor oil. I began sorting tools wrenches in one drawer, drill bits in another. Organization gave my hands something purposeful to do when my mind threatened to spiral. The workshop door opened. Cynthia stood there framed by morning light. No makeup, hair pulled back carelessly. An old gray sweatshirt I'd only ever seen her wear when she did yard work. She looked older than 52, closer to 60, worn. "Harlan," she said quietly. "Please, can we talk?" I set the wrench down on the bench and turned toward her. "All right." She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. The small click sounded heavier than it should have. Her voice was hoarse. "I can't take this anymore. Dorothy left this morning. She said I was weak, said I should have fought harder, fought for what I asked evenly. For us," she said, tears already forming. "For this marriage, for staying. You want to stay." "I don't want to be thrown out like garbage," she snapped. "You're being cruel, Harlan." I inhaled slowly. This was the conversation that mattered. "Cynthia, sit down." She lowered herself onto the workshop stool. I stayed standing not to loom, but because I needed the steadiness in my legs. "I want to be clear," I said. "I am not throwing anyone out. I'm ending a financial arrangement that didn't work. It's the same thing." "No, it isn't." I spoke deliberately, choosing each word. Cruelty is draining someone's paycheck for 10 months without asking. Cruelty is lying about where the money went every time they questioned it. Cruelty is letting your daughter's boyfriend use this house while I work 50 hours a week underground and never telling me. Her face went blank. "Live in your... what are you talking about?" I continued. "Cruelty is forging documents, gambling with someone else's retirement, mocking them online." "I didn't do those things," she whispered. "You participated," I said. "You allowed it." Her shoulders sagged. "I never meant for it to go this far. Intention doesn't erase impact." I reached for the notebook on the workbench and opened to a clean page. "Let me show you what I'm actually offering." I wrote as I spoke. Market rent for a comparable place in Oakdale, $1,400. Utilities, heat, electric, water, internet, $280. Insurance and property tax. Your share, $150. Groceries, $400. I totaled it. Actual monthly cost, $2,230. I slid the notebook toward her. "I'm asking for $1,000. She stared at the numbers. "That means you save $1,130 every month by staying." "That's not cruelty," I said. "That's generosity." Her voice trembled. "We don't have $1,100. Then that's your problem to solve, I said calmly. Full-time work, shared responsibility, or option 2. You're punishing us for being family. I met her eyes. Family doesn't take $80,000 without consent. Family doesn't hide 6 months of someone living in the house. Family doesn't manipulate. And I softened my tone but not my position. Thursday I thought I was having a heart attack, underground, 950 feet down. Her eyes widened. You went to the hospital. They took me to the ER. 3 hours of tests. It was an anxiety attack. Severe. The doctor said at 62 with my history, the next episode might not be anxiety. I let that sit. My father died at 58 from black lung. I'm 62. Every shift I work could be my last. And I decided I'm not spending what time I have left being drained. That isn't cruelty. It's survival. She cried then, quiet, exhausted tears. I don't know how to fix this. I gave you the path I said. Whether you take it is up to you. And if we can't, then you leave. Just like that. Yes, I said, because of everything. She left the workshop slowly, shoulders bent. I stayed a moment longer, listening to the silence. Then later that afternoon around 2, I was at the small desk in my bedroom. Rain had begun tapping softly against the window. The house felt muted. A thought surfaced. The doorbell camera. I'd installed it months ago. Motion activated. Cloud storage. When was the last time I'd checked it? Spring, maybe. I opened the app. Months of archived clips lined the screen. I started with October. Normal, mail carrier. Me coming and going. I scrolled back to September. September 18th. 10:17 a.m. Motion detected. The clip loaded. A young man, late 20s, motorcycle helmet under his arm, walking through my front door. Timestamp 10:17 a.m. I had been underground. I felt my pulse rise. I scrolled forward. September 20th, 11:42 a.m. Same man, entering. September 24th, 1:23 p.m. Same man. September 27th, 10:55 a.m. The pattern was obvious. Weekdays, between 10 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. When I was at work, I checked August, 4 or 5 visits a week. July, well, same. June, first appearance June 12th, 6 months. 6 months of Derek Palmer walking into my house while I worked underground. My hands began to shake, not with fear, with something colder. I clicked another video. September 18th, 3:45 p.m. Derek exiting. The camera caught his face, clearly scruffy beard, leather jacket, casual confidence. Avery stepped into frame. She kissed him goodbye at the door, clear as day. I sat back in the chair, not visiting, living. He had been inside this house using the electricity, the water, the internet I paid for, eating food I bought, showering in hot water heated by my labor, while I worked below ground, and no one told me. I downloaded 20 clips, saved them to a USB drive, labeled it evidence. Then I saved them again to a second drive. Redundancy. Rain tapped harder against the window as the sky darkened. I leaned back and stared at the computer screen. The anger I expected didn't come. Anger needs surprise. And surprise had run out 10 days ago. What I felt instead was something final. Clarity layered over clarity. The numbers, the lies, the visits, the pattern. There was nothing left to discover, just decisions. And for the first time since this started, I didn't feel like I was reacting. I felt finished, done with confusion, done with bargaining, done with being the last to know. The rain continued falling steady and indifferent. I unplugged the USB drive and placed it in the top drawer of my desk. Then I sat in the dim room, listening to the sound of water against glass, and understood something with complete certainty. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply ready to move forward, without them. Week 3, the masks came off completely. Day 15. Tuesday morning, 5:30. I was making coffee in the kitchen when Cynthia appeared in the doorway. She hadn't slept that much was obvious. Dark circles under her eyes like bruises. Hair uncombed falling loose around her shoulders. An old coffee stain on her sweatshirt. Her hands trembled as she gripped the door frame. No preamble, just sharp. "You're going to regret this, Harlan." I poured my coffee into the thermos I'd used for 38 years. Measured, calm. Maybe, but I regret the last 10 months more. When you're alone in this big house eating dinner by yourself, you'll wish. I've been eating alone for months, Cynthia. You just didn't notice. That afternoon, Avery tried a different approach. She cornered me in the living room as I was heading to the workshop, arms crossed, defiant. She was pacing 3 steps one way, pivot 3 steps back, her voice rising with each sentence. "You know what, fine. We'll leave, and everyone will know what you did." I stopped, watched her, waited. What did I do? Abandoned your family, kicked us out over money. Feel free to tell that story, but you should probably mention the $80,000 part too. No one cares about that, then you have nothing to worry about. She opened her mouth, closed it, stormed upstairs. Day 16, Wednesday. Lunch break at the mine on the surface. The sun was weak through November clouds. I was sitting on a bench outside the equipment shed when my phone rang. Unknown number. Harlan Whitaker. Mr. Whitaker, this is Capital One Security. We're calling about suspicious activity on your account. I tensed, set down my sandwich. What activity? A request to add an authorized user, Cynthia Whitaker, and a request to increase your credit limit from $5,000 to $15,000. The request came in this morning at 9:43 a.m. My jaw tightened. Deny it. Remove her as an authorized user completely. Sir, she's your wife. She has legal rights to request remove her, now, and freeze any future requests from her phone number. Pause. Professional. Understood, sir. We'll process that immediately. Is there anything else we can help you with today? No, thank you. I hung up. Marcus was sitting nearby, finishing his lunch. Bologna sandwich. Same thing he'd eaten for 20 years. Trouble. They tried to open more credit under my name. After everything, they're desperate. Desperate people do reckless things. Marcus shook his head. Damn. That evening I came home. The kitchen lights were harsh, fluorescent, unforgiving. Dishes in the sink from lunch plates stacked carelessly. Cynthia was standing by the counter, phone in her hand. When she saw me, her face changed. Caught. Her makeup was smudged under one eye. Nail polish chipped on 3 fingers. She looked like she was coming apart at the seams. The credit card company called you. They did. She switched to defiance, raised her chin. We need that credit. We have expenses. Then use your credit. Now mine's maxed out. Sounds like a pattern. She yelled, actually yelled. Her voice echoed off the tile. You're sabotaging us, making it impossible on purpose. I kept my voice quiet, steady. No, I'm just not subsidizing you anymore. Day 17, Thursday. I was in the hallway heading upstairs to change out of my work clothes when I heard Avery on the phone in the living room. Her voice carried through the open door. Vanessa. Hey, can I crash at your place for a few days? Things here are... A pause, then Vanessa's voice tinny through the speaker. I'm actually really busy right now. Maybe ask someone else. Busy. We were supposed to go to that concert next week. Det speak or be städen. Oh, about that, I can't make it, sorry. Wait, can't make it or don't want to go with me. Silence. Then, look, Avery, I just think maybe we need some space. Things are really complicated right now. Space. We've been friends for 3 years. Yeah, I'll text you sometime. The call ended. I heard Avery's breathing, fast, shallow. Then she dialed again. Ashley, it's me. Listen, can I... Another rejection, same excuse. Really busy right now, sorry. She tried Brittany. Dealing with some personal stuff, can't hang out. Then Madison. Didn't even answer. A text came through, I heard the notification sound. Avery read it aloud, voice breaking. Sorry, can't talk right now. 4 best friends, all suddenly unavailable. I heard her scrolling through her phone, checking social media. A small broken sound. She'd been unfollowed, ghosted online too. Day 18, Friday. Avery found me in the workshop. I was sanding the bookshelf I'd been working on for weeks. Nearly finished now, 6 shelves, solid, walnut joints tight. Sawdust covered the floor. The air smelled like pine resin and mineral spirits. She stood in the doorway, mascara running down both cheeks, hair in a messy bun. She hadn't showered. Are you happy? Her voice was sharp, bitter. You turned everyone against me. I didn't stop sanding. The rhythm helped me think. I haven't talked to your friends. Then why is everyone avoiding me? Maybe they were never your friends. Maybe they just liked what you could afford to pay for. That's not true. I finally looked up, set down the sandpaper. When was the last time you did something that didn't cost money, coffee at their place, a walk in the park? Or was it always fancy brunch shopping trips, spa days? Or $60 Her face fell. The anger drained out of her like water from a broken cup. The money ran out Avery, and apparently so did they. She started crying. Real tears, not manipulation, recognition. I thought Vanessa was my best friend. Best friends don't disappear when your credit card maxes out. I don't have anyone. You have your mother, and you have yourself. That'll have to be enough. That afternoon I heard sounds upstairs, footsteps, dragging, the scrape of cardboard on hardwood, the metallic screech of packing tape being pulled from a dispenser. I went up to check. Avery's bedroom door was open. Empty cardboard boxes stacked against the wall, 6 or 7 of them, different sizes. Labels in her handwriting on some clothes, shoes, makeup. She was folding clothes, packing them carefully into a duffel bag. Cynthia was in the background wrapping picture frames and newspaper. Packing. Avery didn't look at me, kept folding. We don't have the money to stay, you know that. I know. You won. This wasn't about winning. Then what was it about? Survival. That night I heard more boxes being moved, drawers opening and closing, the sound of tape, Cynthia's voice muffled giving instructions, Avery's footsteps back and forth across the ceiling. I checked Facebook Marketplace on my phone out of curiosity. There it was, the Peloton bike, posted an hour ago. $1,800, like new, must sell ASAP. The designer chair, $800, still in plastic. The 70-inch TV, $1,200, no scratches. They were liquidating. 3 days left. The countdown had become real. Day 19. A certified envelope rests in my hand. What's inside will leave me with only 2 real choices: protect myself or protect the illusion of family. Before I open it and tell you exactly what Cynthia did, I want your opinion. Comment 1 if you believe I should go straight to the police. Comment 2 if you think I should confront her face to face first. Comment 3 if you believe I should stay quiet for the sake of family. Drop your number below so I know you're still walking through this with me. And a quick reminder, parts of this story include constructed elements for illustration and reflection. If this content doesn't feel right for you, you're free to step away at any time. Day 19 arrived with the harsh rip of packing tape and the hollow echo of a house preparing to forget who had lived inside it. It was Saturday morning, 10 o'clock sharp, when I pulled back into the driveway with a box of heavy-duty contractor trash bags in the passenger seat. I had driven into town early, bought the thick black kind that don't split under weight. If this was going to end, I wanted it to end without another mess left behind for me to clean. From the outside, nothing looked different. The siding was the same faded beige. The porch light still flickered faintly in daylight, the way it always had. But the second I stepped through the front door, I knew the house had changed. Boxes, brown cardboard everywhere, stacked in the hallway, lined up along the living room wall, clustered near the staircase like silent witnesses. Some were sealed tight with glossy strips of tape. Others were open, half filled with folded sweaters, paperback novels, framed photographs wrapped in old newspaper. The air smelled like dust and adhesive and something else departure. The Peloton was gone. $1,700, Cynthia had said when I asked about it the night before. A stranger with a pickup truck had come while I was at the mine and hauled it away. The spot where it had sat for months collecting dust and reminding me of what my labor funded was, now a pale rectangle on the carpet. Sunlight had reached it for the first time in a year. The designer chair was missing too. The 70-inch television still hung above the fireplace, but a note was taped to the screen in thick black marker, sold, pickup Sunday, 3 p.m. It struck me that everything that had once felt permanent now looked temporary, disposable, like props from a play that had run its final show. Upstairs I could hear them talking, Cynthia's voice low and strained, Avery's sharper and patient. They were deciding what to keep, what to sell, what to leave behind. The conversation sounded practical, almost businesslike. I set the trash bags on the kitchen counter and walked slowly through the living room. Without the exercise bike and chair, the room echoed differently, fewer objects to soften sound. The house felt larger and emptier at the same time. At 12:30, I made myself a turkey sandwich, bread, mustard, a few slices of deli meat, ordinary food for an extraordinary day. I stood at the counter and ate in silence. The doorbell rang. Mail carrier, certified letter, signature required. I stepped onto the porch and signed for it, then looked down at the return address. Oakdale Mortgage Services. My stomach tightened. I hadn't had a mortgage in 8 years. I closed the door and stood in the hallway, the envelope heavy in my hand. Upstairs, Cynthia laughed at something Avery said. The sound felt misplaced, too light for what I suspected. I opened the envelope carefully. Cash out refinance application. My name printed clearly at the top. Property address correct. Loan amount requested $65,000. I scanned down to the signature line. Harlan Whitaker. But it wasn't mine. The handwriting was similar. close enough that a distracted clerk might miss it, but the capital S curved too wide. The double L in Whitaker leaned the wrong direction. Someone had practiced. Someone had tried to copy me. The application date read October 3rd, right in the middle of the 21-day countdown. They had tried to refinance my house. The house I had spent 3 decades paying off. The house I had finally owned free and clear. They had attempted to extract $65,000 in equity without my knowledge. If the mortgage company hadn't flagged the signature for verification, if they had approved it automatically, I would have woken up one morning owing $65,000 on a home that was supposed to be debt-free. I expected rage. I expected my hands to tremble. They didn't. Instead, I felt something colder, focused. At 1:15 p.m., I called Brian Foster. Marcus had given me his card weeks earlier. I had tucked it into my wallet and nearly forgotten about it. He answered quickly. Foster and Associates. Mr. Foster, this is Harlan Whitaker. I need advice. Tell me what's going on. I told him everything. The drained joint account, the $80,000 gone over 10 months, the 21-day ultimatum, the camera footage of Avery's boyfriend entering my home repeatedly, and now the refinance application, the forged signature, the attempt to place debt on my property. He was silent for several seconds. Mr. Whitaker, he said, finally what you're describing is mortgage fraud and forgery, both felonies, potentially grand larceny. If prosecuted, you're looking at serious prison time. I assumed as much. My recommendation is to file a police report immediately, even if you don't press charges. Establish documentation. If anything else is attempted, identity misuse, credit fraud, you'll have a record protecting you. And if I decide to press charges, you have strong grounds. But that's your decision. I paused. I don't want revenge, I said. I want peace. Then file the report. Preserve your evidence. Make it clear you're serious. That may be enough. Thank you. Good luck, Mr. Whitaker. I ended the call and stared at the letter again. $65,000. At 2 o'clock, I went upstairs. Cynthia was in the bedroom folding clothes into a suitcase. She looked up, saw the envelope, and immediately went pale. Harlan. I held up the letter. Cash out refinance. $65,000. My signature. Except I never signed it. She swallowed. We were desperate, she said quietly. We needed money. To stay. To pay what you were asking. Who signed it? I asked. Silence. You or Avery? I did, she whispered. The room felt smaller. It's our house, she said weakly. I was accessing equity. It's my house, I corrected calmly. My name on the deed. My mortgage paid off. And you forged my signature on a legal document to borrow $65,000. I wasn't stealing. You were committing mortgage fraud, I said. That's a felony. 2 to 7 years. She sat down heavily on the bed. I spoke to a lawyer an hour ago, I continued. He advised me to file a police report. Her eyes widened. You're going to have me arrested. I'm filing a report, I said. Whether I pursue charges is my choice. Please. I kept my voice steady. I'm not pressing charges. Not because you don't deserve consequences, but because I don't want my life tied up in court. I don't want hearings. I don't want testimony. I want closure. Tears streamed down her face. But understand this, I said. If you are not gone by Monday morning, or if you ever use my name again for credit loans, anything I will prosecute. I will use every piece of evidence I have. The bank records, the doorbell footage, this letter. I held it up one last time. Do you understand? She nodded. I went downstairs and called the Oakdale Police non-emergency line, reported attempted mortgage fraud and forgery. They took my statement and told me an officer would follow up Monday. By evening, I had everything documented. The $80,000 drained from the account. The doorbell camera videos showing Derek entering my home for months. The forged refinance application. I could have pursued criminal charges, could have dragged them into courtrooms and watched consequences unfold. But as I sat alone in the workshop that night, listening to their voices drift faintly through the walls, Cynthia's subdued, Avery's resentful, I realized something. Revenge wouldn't give me back 38 years underground. It wouldn't restore the hearing I'd lost to machinery. It wouldn't clear my lungs or smooth the scars on my hands. Revenge requires energy, and I was done spending mine. All I wanted was my house back, my name back, my peace back. By Monday I would have it, and that was enough. Monday, day 21. The deadline had stopped being a warning. It had become a release valve. I woke at 5:30 out of habit, even though I had taken the day off. 38 years of rising before dawn doesn't disappear just because your life shifts. My body still expected steel-toed boots, a thermos of coffee, and the descent 950 feet underground. Instead, I lay still in the dark and listened. The house was quiet in that suspended way it gets before something final happens. No television murmuring downstairs, no footsteps in the hallway, no cabinet doors opening and closing. At 6:15, the quiet broke. A diesel engine rumbled into the driveway, the heavy, unmistakable sound of a U-Haul truck. The reverse alarm started beep, beep, beep as it backed in. Then the engine idled. A door slammed. Another. Muffled voices, low, tired. I sat up slowly. This was it. I dressed in jeans and a flannel shirt, then went downstairs and made coffee. The familiar routine steadied me, measuring the grounds, pouring water, waiting for the drip. I carried the mug to the kitchen window and stood there watching. Cynthia and Avery were already loading boxes. They must have been up since 4, finishing the last of it, taping lids shut, labeling in thick black marker. The U-Haul's back door stood open like a metal mouth, waiting to swallow what was left of them in this house. At 8:30, another car pulled into the driveway. Dorothy's silver Cadillac. She stepped out wearing sunglasses and a wool coat, like she was attending a meeting, not helping her daughter move out of a house she'd tried to leverage into debt. She glanced at my Silverado in its usual place, and her mouth twisted into something tight and contemptuous. She didn't knock, didn't come inside. She went straight to the truck and started lifting. I turned away from the window and went out to the workshop. The bookshelf was nearly finished. 6 shelves, solid walnut, clean lines, tight joints. I'd been working on it for 3 months longer than I'd expected. Over these past 3 weeks, every time the house grew tense, I had come out here and sanded. The repetition helped. The smell of wood shavings, the feel of grit smoothing rough edges. The physical act of shaping something into order when everything else felt chaotic. Through the small workshop window, I could see the driveway. Boxes moved from porch to truck in a steady rhythm. Suitcases, garbage bags bulging with clothes. The stand mixer Cynthia had insisted on 2 years ago, $400 used twice. Lamps, picture frames, a half-assembled bookshelf from Avery's room that had always leaned slightly left. They worked mostly in silence. No shouting, no dramatic scenes. Just cardboard scraping metal, the thud of weight shifting, occasional grunts of effort. Dorothy handled most of the heavier items. Cynthia looked drained, pale, her shoulders curved inward like she was bracing against wind that wasn't there. Avery kept her head down, arms full of hangers and dresses still on them, sliding them into the truck like someone operating on muscle memory. They left behind what had always been mine. The couch I'd bought secondhand in 1998. The kitchen table with the uneven leg. The dresser upstairs with the stubborn drawer. The plain white dishes in the cabinet. Nothing fancy, nothing aspirational. Just serviceable things that had lasted longer than the marriage. At 2 o'clock, I made myself another sandwich. Turkey and mustard again. Ate it standing at the workbench, eyes drifting to the driveway between bites. By 2:45, the truck was full. They shut the back door with a hollow metallic clang and secured it with a padlock. The 3 of them stood together in the driveway, Dorothy gesturing sharply toward the house, Cynthia shaking her head, Avery with her arms crossed staring at the pavement. Then Cynthia turned. She walked toward the workshop. I set the sandpaper down and wiped my hands on my jeans. She knocked, 3 soft taps. I opened the door. She stood there in a gray hoodie and jeans. No makeup, hair pulled back. She looked older than her 52 years, not in wrinkles but in wear. "We're leaving," she said. I know. Silence stretched between us. Her eyes drifted past me into the workshop, took in the bookshelf, the tools neatly arranged on pegboard, the stacks of scrap wood I saved because sometimes a small piece solves a big problem. "It didn't have to end like this," she said quietly. "It didn't have to start like this either." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. "I'm sorry," she said, "for the lies, for everything." I studied her face. I believed she felt something. Regret maybe, exhaustion certainly. But I didn't believe she was sorry for the choices. I believed she was sorry for the consequences. "Apologies don't undo what happened," I said. She nodded slowly. "You look lighter," she added. "I considered that. I am. I hope you find what you're looking for." I already did. She waited for more. I didn't give it. She hesitated, then took a step back. "If you ever—" "No," just one word. It hung between us like a closed door. She understood. She turned and walked back toward the driveway. Dorothy was already in the driver's seat. Avery climbed into the middle, squeezed between them, staring straight ahead. The engine roared to life. The truck sagged under the weight suspension, dipped tires bulging slightly. It rolled forward, paused at the end of the driveway. Dorothy adjusted something, then made a left turn. The truck disappeared down the street. I stood in the workshop doorway until I couldn't see it anymore. Then until I couldn't hear it anymore. Only when the sound had completely faded did I step back inside. The house felt different. Not just emptier. Open, the air seemed to move more freely. Light came through the windows without bouncing off piles of clutter or reflecting off screens. I walked through each room, the living room first. My couch sat where it always had, the one I bought 26 years ago, before Cynthia, before Avery, before any of this. The coffee table I built in this workshop, hand sanding it smooth on a winter night, long before I imagined sharing this space. The television was gone, just the mount and a rectangle of darker paint where it had shielded the wall from sunlight. The bookshelf held my books, Louis L'Amour, Larry McMurtry, westerns about men who understood hard ground and harder decisions. The kitchen, my dishes in the cabinet, and my coffee maker on the counter. I opened the refrigerator. The masking tape labels Harlan's "Do Not Touch" were still there. I peeled them off slowly and dropped them into the trash. I didn't need them anymore. Upstairs, Avery's room was bare. Dust outlines marked where the dresser and bed had stood. Faint tape residue on the walls from posters long removed. Cynthia's closet was empty too. A few wire hangers remained. On the top shelf, a shoebox. I pulled it down. Inside were old photographs, Cynthia and her first husband. Cynthia holding Avery as a baby, smiling faces from a life that had existed before mine intersected with hers. I closed the box and carried it downstairs. Set it by the curb with the trash. Not out of spite, out of closure. I returned to the living room and sat in my chair by the window. The same chair Dorothy had occupied 3 weeks ago, while trying to diminish me in my own home. I sat there and breathed. No footsteps upstairs. No low conversations through walls. No television blaring reality shows I never watched. No one asking for money, for favors, for extensions. Just the furnace clicking on, the hum of the refrigerator, the steady tick of the wall clock, the same clock that had been here when I bought this house in 2001. For 3 weeks I had pushed toward this moment. 3 weeks of confrontation, of boundary setting, of sleepless nights listening to whispers through drywall. Now that it had arrived, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt spacious. Like someone had thrown open every window in a house that had been sealed shut for too long. The November air was cold, sharp, but clean. I leaned back in my chair and let the quiet settle fully into the walls. For the first time in 18 months, I could breathe without bracing for the next demand. The house wasn't lonely. It was mine. The first night alone, I locked the bedroom door out of reflex. Then I stood there in the dark hand still on the knob and realized I had locked it because I'd grown used to protecting myself inside my own house. No one was here. No one was going to test the handle at 3 in the morning. No one was going to shuffle down the hallway and borrow cash from my wallet while I slept. No one was going to whisper on the phone behind a half-closed door. The silence wasn't tense anymore. It was real. I unlocked the door. Then I left it open, just a few inches. Let the air move through the hallway and into the bedroom like it had a right to. Tuesday morning, day 22. I woke at 5:30 as always. My body still ran on decades of early shifts. But instead of swinging my legs over the side of the bed and bracing for another 12-hour descent underground, I stayed seated on the edge of the mattress for a moment. The house didn't rush me. I went downstairs slowly and made coffee. The old percolator hissed softly. I carried the mug to the kitchen table and sat there watching the sun come up over the backyard. Orange light filtered through bare November branches. The grass held a thin layer of frost. No car doors slamming. No voices. Just the slow unfolding of morning. For once I didn't hurry. I decided to make breakfast. Not a quick piece of toast eaten standing at the counter. A real breakfast. Bacon, eggs, toast. When the bacon hit the skillet, the kitchen filled with that sharp, salty smell of grease. It curled into the air and clung to the walls. Cynthia had hated that smell. Said it lingered for days, seeped into curtains and upholstery. I had stopped cooking bacon years ago to keep the peace. Now I cooked a whole pound. The grease popped and snapped. The egg sizzled in the rendered fat. I stood there and listened to it like it was music. I ate at the table with yesterday's newspaper spread open in front of me, took my time, chewed slowly, poured a second cup of coffee. Afterward, I opened the refrigerator. The labels were still there. Masking tape strips with thick black marker, Harlan's, "Do Not Touch." I peeled them off one by one. Milk, butter, deli meat, eggs. rolled each strip into a small ball, and tossed them into the trash. I didn't need labels anymore. The entire house was Harlan's. Wednesday. I called the mine and said I wasn't coming in. First time I'd taken a day like that in 2 years. The supervisor sounded surprised, but he didn't question it. I had earned the right to be absent once in a while. I spent the entire day in the workshop finishing the bookshelf. I sanded every edge smooth, applied a coat of polyurethane, waited for it to dry, sanded lightly again, applied another coat, repeated the process 3 times. By evening, the walnut shelves glowed softly under the light. The grain showed through the finish like lines in a map. I stepped back and looked at it. It wasn't elaborate, no ornate carvings, no dramatic flair, just solid, balanced, well-made. I felt a quiet pride settle in my chest. I had built something sturdy, something that would hold weight. Thursday afternoon, Marcus called. "You working Saturday?" he asked. "No, got the day off. Want to fish Millbrook Reservoir. Haven't been out there in months." I looked around the house, sunlight on the floor, the faint smell of sawdust lingering from the workshop. "Yeah," I said, "I'd like that." Saturday morning at 6, we met at the reservoir. 40 degrees. Our breath turned to mist in the air. The water lay still, a thin layer of fog hovering above it. We set up on the east bank, cast our lines, sipped coffee from thermoses. We didn't talk much at first. Didn't need to. After about an hour, Marcus glanced at me. "You look different." "Different how?" "Lighter," he said. "You smiled twice already. I haven't seen that in a while." I reeled in my line and cast it again. I didn't realize how heavy it was until I set it down. He nodded like he understood completely. We fished until noon, caught 3 bass and a catfish, threw them all back. It wasn't about taking anything home. Sunday evening, I invited Marcus over for dinner. First guest in the house since Cynthia left. We grilled steaks on the back porch. The smell of charcoal and meat drifted into the yard. We drank beer and sat in the living room, my couch, my coffee table, my bookshelf now filled with my books. "Place feels different," Marcus said. "It is. You gonna stay?" "Yeah," I said. "It's paid for. Why would I leave?" He raised his bottle. "To staying." I clinked mine against his. "To staying." Monday, day 28. 1 week since the truck pulled away. I was in the workshop planning a piece of oak for a small side table I'd been thinking about when my phone rang. Unknown number. I considered letting it go to voicemail. Something made me answer. "Hello." A pause. Then Harlan, "Cynthia." But not the version I remembered. Her voice sounded thinner, smaller. "What do you want?" I asked. We need help." I set the plane down. "We're done," I said. I know you said that. But Harlan, we're in a bad place." I waited. The apartment we found, it's 2 bedrooms. We're splitting it 3 ways. Me, Avery, and my mother. Dorothy's living with you. She lost her house, Cynthia said quietly. Casino debts. The bank foreclosed. I almost laughed. "Sounds familiar," I said. "Don't," she snapped. Then her voice cracked. "Please don't." I stayed silent. "The landlord wants $2,000 for the deposit. We have $900. Avery's job doesn't start for 2 weeks. I'm trying to get more hours at the library, but they're cutting back." "Cynthia?" She stopped talking. "Why are you calling me?" "Because I don't know who else to call. Because we're desperate. Because you need money." Silence. "That's all I ever was," I said calmly. "A bank account with a pulse." "That's not fair." "Fair?" I kept my tone level. "You drained $80,000 from me. You tried to refinance my house. You let your daughter's boyfriend live in my home for 6 months without telling me. And now, a week after you leave, you're asking for more." "It's just $2,000. A loan. I'll pay you back." "No, please." "I'm not your safety net anymore," I said. "I'm not your emergency fund. Figure it out." Her tone shifted. "I didn't think you'd actually cut me off completely," she said. "I thought you'd still care." "I cared for 18 months, I replied. "You use that." "You're being cruel." "I'm being clear." Another long silence. "I was wrong about you," she said. "I thought you were kind." "I am," I said. "Just not to people who steal from me. If that's how you want to remember this." "Cynthia," I interrupted. "I don't want to remember this at all." She hung up. I stood there holding the phone, waiting for guilt, for the urge to send the money, for the old reflex to fix things. Nothing came, just quiet. I set the phone down and picked up the plane, ran it smoothly along the oak. That night I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and pen. I wrote a list, things I want to do, learn new woodworking techniques, dovetail joints, inlay work. Fish once a week, maybe twice. Visit Nathan in Colorado. 3 years is too long. Fix the back porch steps. Read the Louis L'Amour books I haven't touched. 5 items. Simple. Manageable. Mine. I stared at the list for a long time. It wasn't flashy. There were no grand ambitions. Just small, steady goals. Things I'd postponed because I was exhausted, because I was stressed, because every extra dollar and ounce of energy had gone somewhere else. Now I had time. Now I had energy. Now I had space. I closed the notebook and leaned back in my chair. The house was quiet, not empty. Peaceful. This wasn't victory. It wasn't revenge. It was ownership of my house, of my money, of my time, of my future. For the first time in a long while, everything ahead of me belonged to me, and that was enough. Day 35. I thought the hard part was behind me. Then Derek Palmer's motorcycle appeared in my driveway. It was Tuesday evening, the first week of December, and the air had that sharp bite that comes with frost settling on bare ground. The sun had dropped behind the ridgeline about 20 minutes earlier, leaving the sky a dull orange fading to gray. I had just pulled my Silverado into the driveway after a quick run to the grocery store, 2 plastic bags in hand containing the basics: milk, eggs, bread, and a pound of decent coffee. The kind of shopping I could do without checking a bank balance or wondering if someone else had already drained the account. I was halfway to the front door when I heard the engine. Not the smooth hum of a car, but the deep, aggressive rumble of a motorcycle. I turned and saw him. Black Harley-style bike leather jacket zipped to the collar, no helmet. He rolled into my driveway like he owned it, cut the engine, and swung one leg over the seat with the kind of casual arrogance that told me he'd done this before. Derek Palmer. 28 years old, scruffy beard, the same face I'd seen on my doorbell camera for 6 months. The same guy who'd received $16,400 of my paycheck in the middle of the night. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. His presence was the message. I set the grocery bags on the porch steps and stayed where I was, 10 feet between us, my keys still in my hand. The driveway gravel crunched under his boots as he walked toward me, hands in his jacket pockets, breath misting in the cold air. "You Harlan Whitaker?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "I am." "You're the guy who kicked Avery and her mom out with nowhere to go." I kept my voice level. I gave them 3 weeks' notice in clear terms. They chose not to accept them. Derek took another step forward. "You think that makes you right? You think kicking family to the curb over money makes you a good person? I think draining $80,000 from a joint account and hiding a boyfriend in my house for 6 months without permission doesn't make you family." His jaw tightened. "You owe them. I owe nothing. I already gave $80,000. That's 10 months of underground labor at 950 feet. You got 16,400 of it. I have the statements." He didn't deny it. He just stepped closer, close enough that I could smell cigarette smoke on his jacket. "You're going to fix this old man. You're going to give Cynthia the $2,000 she needs for that deposit, and you're going to apologize for being a selfish piece of..." I pulled my phone from my pocket, unlocked it with my thumb, and tapped the green phone icon. Derek stopped mid-sentence. "What are you doing?" I held up one finger, put the phone to my ear, and heard the click of the line connecting. "At 911, what's your emergency?" "This is Harlan Whitaker, 207 Maple Ridge Road. There's a man on my property threatening me. I'd like an officer sent out." Derek's eyes widened. "You're calling the cops?" I ignored him. The operator's voice was calm and professional. "Are you in immediate danger, sir? What he found das Beinuswerk steig." "Not yet, but he's standing in my driveway making threats and he's not leaving." "Can you describe the individual?" "Male, late 20s, black leather jacket, riding a black motorcycle. His name is Derek Palmer." Derek swore under his breath, turned, and walked quickly back to his bike. He threw one leg over, fired up the engine, and glared at me from across the driveway. "You're going to regret this, old man." Then he twisted the throttle, spun the rear tire hard enough to leave a black streak across the gravel, and roared out onto Maple Ridge Road. The sound faded into the distance, but I knew he hadn't gone far. The operator was still on the line. "Sir, is the individual still on your property?" "He just left, but I have video evidence of him entering my home multiple times over the past 6 months without my knowledge, and I'd like to file a report." "Officers are en route. Stay on the line until they arrive." I sat on the porch steps, phone in hand, groceries beside me, and waited. 8 minutes later, 2 patrol cars pulled into my driveway, lights flashing, but no sirens. Officer Reeves stepped out first, a solid man in his 40s, with a buzz cut and a no-nonsense expression. Officer Carter followed, younger, sharper, a notebook already in her hand. "Mr. Whitaker?" Reeves asked. "That's me." You called about a threatening individual? Derek Palmer. He showed up uninvited, demanded money, and threatened me when I refused. Carter flipped open her notebook. Has he been here before? Not since I discovered he'd been living in my house for 6 months while I was at work. I have doorbell footage from June through September, showing him entering and leaving. Reeves raised an eyebrow. You have that footage available? On my phone, cloud stored. I can show you right now. I pulled up the app, scrolled back to June 12th, and played the first clip. Derek entering through the front door at 10:17 in the morning, Avery kissing him goodbye at 3:45. Reeves watched silently. Carter wrote. How much did he take? Carter asked. $16,400 in transfers. I have the bank statements inside. Reeves nodded. We'll need copies of those, and we'll need a formal statement about tonight's threat. I gave them everything, the timeline, the transfers, the doorbell footage, the joint account drain, the forged mortgage application. By the time we finished, it was 7:30. You should file for a PFA order, Reeves said. Protection from abuse. It'll prohibit him from coming within 500 feet of you or your property. Given the evidence you have, it'll likely be granted within 48 hours. Where do I file? County courthouse. Tomorrow morning, first thing. Bring this footage and the statements. I thanked them. They left. I stood in my driveway under the floodlight, watching the taillights disappear down Maple Ridge Road. Then I texted Marcus. Need backup? His reply came 30 seconds later. On my way, bring coffee. He arrived at 7:45, stayed until 9, and we didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Sometimes presence is enough. After he left, I locked every door, double-checked the cameras, and set the restraining order paperwork on the kitchen table for tomorrow morning. The threats were over. Now the healing could begin. Day 35. I truly believed the worst was over. I thought the arguments, the threats, the legal letters, and the late-night confrontations had already taken their turn. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday evening in early December, the kind of cold that doesn't announce itself loudly, but seeps into your bones once the sun drops. The sky was fading from burnt orange to a dull winter gray behind the ridge. Frost had already started forming along the edges of the lawn. My breath hung in the air when I stepped out of the Silverado with 2 grocery bags in my hands, milk, eggs, bread, and a pound of decent coffee. Nothing extravagant, just the quiet pleasure of buying what I needed, without checking a balance or wondering who else had access to it. I was halfway to the front door when I heard it. Not a car, a motorcycle. Deep, aggressive, the kind of engine that announces itself before it arrives. I turned. A black Harley-style bike rolled into my driveway, like it had every right to be there. The rider didn't wear a helmet. He didn't slow down politely or hesitate near the curb. He came straight in, cut the engine, and swung one leg over the seat with casual arrogance. Derek Palmer, 28 years old, scruffy beard, leather jacket zipped high, the same face I'd seen in doorbell footage for 6 months. The same man who had quietly received $16,400 of my paycheck in midnight transfers. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. The message was clear. He thought I would fold. I set the grocery bags down on the porch steps and stayed where I was, 10 feet between us, my keys still in my hand. The gravel crunched under his boots as he walked toward me. His breath fogged in the cold air. His hands remained in his jacket pockets like he was strolling into a conversation he'd already decided he'd win. You Harlan Whitaker? He asked. You know I am. You're the guy who kicked Avery and her mom out with nowhere to go. His tone wasn't questioning. It was accusing. I gave them 3 weeks' notice, I said evenly. Clear terms. They chose not to accept them. He stepped closer. You think that makes you right. You think throwing family out over money makes you a decent man. I think draining $80,000 from a joint account and hiding a boyfriend in my house for 6 months without my knowledge doesn't make you family. His jaw tightened. You owe them. The word hung in the air. I owe nothing, I replied. I already gave $80,000. That's 10 months of underground labor at 950 feet. You personally received $16,400. I have the statements. He didn't deny it. Instead, he closed the distance further, close enough that I could smell stale cigarette smoke on his jacket. You're going to fix this, he said quietly. You're going to give Cynthia the $2,000 she needs for that apartment deposit. And you're going to apologize for being a selfish piece of... I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Unlocked it. Tapped the green icon. He stopped mid-sentence. What are you doing? I held up one finger and put the phone to my ear. The line clicked. 911, what's your emergency? This is Harlan Whitaker 207 Maple Ridge Road, I said calmly. There's a man on my property threatening me. I'd like an officer dispatched. Derek stared at me in disbelief. You're calling the cops. I ignored him. Are you in immediate danger, sir? The operator asked. Not yet, but he's refusing to leave and making threats. Can you describe him? Male, late 20s, black leather jacket, black motorcycle. Name is Derek Palmer. Derek muttered something under his breath. Then louder, You're serious? I didn't respond to him. The operator's voice remained steady. Officers are on the way. Stay on the line. Derek stepped back, clearly calculating. He walked toward his bike. You're going to regret this, old man, he said. He kicked the engine to life. The rear tire spun hard enough to scatter gravel across the driveway. He shot one last glare at me, then roared out onto Maple Ridge Road. The engine noise faded quickly. The operator was still speaking. Is the individual still present? He just left, I said. But I have video footage of him entering my home repeatedly over 6 months without my knowledge. I'd like to file a report. Officers are en route. I sat down on the porch steps and waited. The grocery bags rested beside me, milk sweating through thin plastic. 8 minutes later, 2 patrol cars pulled in, lights flashing, no sirens. Officer Reeves stepped out first. Solid build, buzz cut, calm posture. Officer Carter followed, already holding a small notebook. Mr. Whitaker, Reeves asked. That's me. You reported a threatening individual. Derek Palmer, I said. He came here demanding money and made threats when I refused. Carter began writing. Has he been here before, she asked. Not since I discovered he'd been entering my home while I was at work. I have doorbell footage from June through September. Reeves's expression shifted slightly. You have it available? Yes. I pulled up the app and scrolled to June 12th, 10:17 a.m. Derek entering through the front door. I fast-forwarded to 3:45 p.m., Avery kissing him goodbye. Carter kept writing. How much money was transferred to him, she asked. $16,400, I said, documented in bank statements. Reeves nodded slowly. We'll need copies, and we'll need a formal statement regarding tonight. We stood in my kitchen for nearly an hour while I explained everything. The drained account, the mortgage fraud attempt, the transfers, the timeline. By the time we finished, it was close to 7:30. You should file for a PFA, Reeves said. Protection from abuse. It will legally prohibit him from coming within 500 feet of you or your property. How long does it take? Likely granted within 48 hours with this evidence. File first thing in the morning? County courthouse, I asked. Yes, I thanked them. The patrol cars pulled away taillights, disappearing into the cold evening. I stood in the driveway under the floodlight, listening to the quiet settle back in. Then I texted Marcus. Need backup? 30 seconds later, his reply. On my way, bring coffee. He arrived within 15 minutes. No questions, no speeches, just presence. We stood in the workshop for a while. He leaned against the bench while I poured coffee into 2 chipped mugs. He show up, Marcus asked. Yeah. You call? Yeah. He nodded. Good. We didn't say much else. Didn't need to. Sometimes solidarity isn't loud. At 9 o'clock he left. I walked through the house one more time. Locked every door, checked every camera angle. Set the mortgage fraud letter, the bank statements, and printed screenshots of the doorbell footage neatly on the kitchen table for the courthouse in the morning. I didn't feel shaken. I didn't feel scared. If anything, I felt confirmed. They had tried intimidation. It failed. I turned off the kitchen light and stood in the dark for a moment. The threats were done. The fear tactics were done. The old pattern pressure guilt manipulation was done. Now came structure. Now came legal boundaries. Now came healing. I went upstairs, left the bedroom door unlocked, and lay down. The house was quiet, and for the first time in a long time, I knew it would stay that way. December became January. January became March. The seasons changed, and so did I. The house still felt too big some mornings, the silence too loud, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not the tense walking on eggshells quiet of the last 18 months. This was the kind of silence where I could hear myself think again, where I could breathe without calculating the cost. The first Wednesday in December, Marcus convinced me to join him at Rosie's Diner for coffee. 6:30 in the morning, an hour before our shift. Inside, the air smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee, and a group of men occupied the long corner booth near the window. Former miners and factory workers, and one retired truck driver. Marcus made 7, I made 8. Earl, the oldest, looked up when we walked in. White hair, thick glasses, suspenders over a flannel shirt. He gestured to the empty seat beside him. Harlan Wright heard, "You're newly single. Small towns. Everyone knows everything." I sat down. That's right. Rough time. It was. It's better now. Earl nodded once and poured me coffee from the pot on the table. Nobody pushed for details. That was small town courtesy. They accepted me. That Wednesday morning ritual became an anchor. Coffee, eggs, and toast for $6.50 45 minutes of talk about sports and weather and grandkids. Then we'd head to the mine. Simple, grounding, exactly what I needed. Mid-December. I started working on the birdhouse I'd abandoned 2 years earlier. I spent a weekend sanding, assembling, painting it a deep barn red. I mounted it on the oak tree in my backyard 15 feet up, facing east. By mid-January, a pair of cardinals had moved in. I'd watch them from the kitchen window every morning, while my coffee brewed 2 bright red flashes against bare branches. It was a small victory, but it mattered. Late December, I checked my bank balance out of habit. The number on the screen stopped me cold. $4,200. The first time I'd been over $4,000 in 10 months. I stared at it for a long moment. $3,400 paycheck minus $1,800 in expenses left $1,600 in savings every month. No mysterious withdrawals. No 2 a.m. cash advances to someone I'd never met. Just my money sitting where I left it, growing slowly and steadily. Christmas came. I spent it alone, and it was a choice, not loneliness. I made a small turkey breast mashed potatoes with real butter and watched It's a Wonderful Life on the old television. Marcus had invited me to his daughter's house for dinner, but I'd declined. I wasn't ready for family chaos yet, but I appreciated the invite. January marked month 3. I called the credit card company on the 15th and told the woman on the phone I wanted to pay off the full balance, $8,000 in charges I hadn't made. She processed the payment. 2 minutes later, my balance read 0. 1 card down, 1 to go. My credit score started climbing. 680 in December, 695 by the end of January. Small steps, but forward. Saturday fishing trips with Marcus became routine. We'd meet at Millbrook Reservoir at 8 in the morning, thermoses of black coffee and bologna sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. We'd catch bass, admire them, release them back into the cold green water. Sometimes we talked, more often we sat in comfortable silence. One Saturday in late January, Marcus glanced over at me. "You're smiling more, Stu." I hadn't noticed. "Am I?" "Yeah, it's good." February. I did something I hadn't done in years. I treated myself. $220 on new work boots, Timberland steel toes, good quality leather. I didn't feel guilty. It was my money, my choice. I'd been wearing painful boots for 2 years, saving money for a household that never saved anything for me. That realization didn't make me angry anymore. It just made me sad for the man I'd been. That same week, I bought an $18 ribeye steak, the kind with good marbling and a thick cut. I grilled it on my back porch, cooked it to medium rare, and ate it at my dining table with Beethoven's 6th Symphony, playing softly from the old radio. Cynthia had hated classical music. I loved it. I was reclaiming my own tastes piece by piece, meal by meal. March brought Tommy back to work. 6 months of recovery, a titanium rod in his femur, and a slight limp he'd carry the rest of his life. At lunch, he sat down across from me. "Heard you had your own cave-in at home, Stu." I smiled faintly. "Roof came down, but I'm rebuilding." "Good man. Life's too short to live in unstable tunnels." Mining wisdom, the best kind. Mid-March. I went to the doctor for a routine checkup. When he finished, he looked at me over his glasses. "Whatever you changed, Harlan, keep doing it." My weight was down 15 pounds. My blood pressure had dropped. I was sleeping 7 hours a night instead of 4 or 5. The chest pain was gone. Late March, I realized the last call from Cynthia had been 89 days earlier. No calls since, no texts. I hadn't thought about her in weeks, not with anger, not with regret. I just hadn't thought about her. That I understood was what healing looked like. By the end of month 4, my savings account held $8,400. I had $12,000 left in debt. My house was fully mine. My car was paid off. My income was steady. Financial stability had been restored. By April, I'd stopped checking my phone for her name, stopped rehearsing conversations that would never happen. The wondering had been replaced by knowing. I was 62 years old. I'd spent 38 years underground, 18 months in a broken marriage, and 3 months learning what peace actually felt like. It felt like morning coffee without tension, like fishing without checking the time, like sleeping through the night. It felt simple. and simple I was learning was underrated. 8 months, 2 seasons. Long enough to forget some scars, not long enough to forgive them. It was a Saturday afternoon in June, the kind of warm summer day where the breeze comes through the open workshop door and carries the smell of fresh-cut grass. 75 degrees clear sky, not a cloud. I was finishing the oak bookshelf I'd started back in month 1, the one I'd abandoned when everything fell apart. 6 shelves, hand-sanded mortise and tenon joints, the kind of craftsmanship you can't rush. The radio played Tom Petty, and I was content, truly content. The knock on the screen door was soft, hesitant. I looked up and saw a woman standing outside. It took me a full second to recognize her. Cynthia, but different. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, gray streaks she'd stopped covering. No salon dye, just natural aging. Her face was lined and makeup-free, the kind of tired that settles into skin after months of hard work. Her hands were rough and red, and chapped nails short and unpolished. She wore faded jeans that looked like they'd come from Goodwill, a plain t-shirt, and worn sneakers with frayed laces. Everything about her body language was different. Defeated. Humble. I set the sandpaper down and removed my glasses. Cynthia. Hi, Harlan. Can I come in? I hesitated, then nodded and opened the screen door. She stepped inside, her eyes sweeping the organized tools, the half-finished projects. You've been busy. Staying busy helps. I gestured to the old workshop stool near the window. She sat. I leaned against the workbench. How did you know I'd be here? Saturday afternoon. You always loved your workshop. Still do. She folded her hands in her lap, then held them out toward me, palms up. I'm not here for money. Okay, I'm working 2 jobs now. Morning shift at Valley Diner, 6 to 2. Evening housekeeping at Budget Inn, 4 to 10. That's hard work. It is. She turned her hands over, slowly showing me the damage. Rough skin, cracked and calloused from scrubbing and dish soap. My hands are always sore. I come home and there's nothing left. No energy, no money, just empty. She paused. That's how you felt, wasn't it? For 18 months. Coming home empty? I nodded once. Yes, I understand now what you meant. About boundaries, about being used. What changed? Working 70 hours a week just to make rent and groceries. Counting every dollar, choosing between gas and food. Avery and we fight now. About money. Avery works at Target, $15.50 an hour. Derek left her 2 months after we moved out. The second she couldn't send him money anymore. I'm sorry to hear that. Cynthia looked at me surprised. Are you really? I'm sorry she got hurt. I'm not sorry the situation ended. He was using her the whole time. Just like... She stopped, swallowed. Just like we used you. It was the first time she'd said it that plainly. Her tears started then, not the manipulative kind I'd seen before, but the exhausted kind. I'm not asking to come back. I know that door is closed. I kept my voice gentle. It is. I just needed you to know that I see it, what we took from you. Thank you for saying that. Are you happy? I looked around my workshop. The organized tools, the half-finished projects at my own pace, the screen door open to my yard, my house, my life. I'm better than okay, Cynthia. I'm free. She nodded and the tears fell. I hope you find someone who deserves you. I'm not looking, but thank you. A long silence settled. Cynthia stood. I should go. I just needed to say it, face to face. I'm sorry, Harlan. Truly sorry. I believe you. I think you're sorry now. I wish you'd been sorry 10 months ago. But growth happens when it happens. We walked to the door together. Cynthia paused at the threshold. For what it's worth, I did love you. At the beginning. I answered honestly. I know, I loved you too. But love without respect isn't enough. She stepped outside, turned back once. Take care of yourself, Harlan. You too, Cynthia. I mean that. I watched her walk to her car. A 2008 Honda Civic, faded blue paint, dented bumper rust spots along the wheel wells. She got in, and the engine coughed twice before catching. She backed out slowly, waved once through the window. I raised my hand in acknowledgement, not invitation. The car turned onto the street and disappeared. I returned to the workbench, picked up the sandpaper, and went back to the bookshelf. My mind was already back in the present moment. Cynthia was already past tense. I finished the bookshelf that evening. 6 shelves, hand-sanded, stained dark walnut, sealed with 3 coats of polyurethane. It would go to Oakdale Library on Monday, a donation. Something made with my hands that would serve the community. Cynthia had come to say goodbye. I'd let her. We'd both needed it. But as I ran my hand over the smooth wood grain one last time, I realized something. I'd already said goodbye to her months ago. Today was just her catching up. October again. 1 year since the card was declined. 1 year since everything changed. Wednesday morning, 5:45. I woke naturally, no alarm, and sat on the edge of my bed with my feet flat on the cool wood floor. I stretched my back, felt the familiar ache that 38 years underground had carved into my spine. My knees creaked when I stood. I reached for the hearing aids on my nightstand and fitted them into both ears. My body wasn't new. It wasn't healed, but I was rested. Deeply, truly rested in a way I hadn't been in years. I walked barefoot to the kitchen and made coffee the way I always did. Dark roast, 2 sugars, the smell filling the quiet house. I carried the mug out to the front porch and sat on the swing I'd repaired back in March. 6 o'clock, sunrise. The temperature hovered around 48 degrees, cold enough that frost covered the grass in a thin white sheet. The cardinals were at the birdhouse, the same pair I'd been watching since January, or maybe new ones. Mrs. Peterson walked her golden retriever past my house, and she waved. I waved back. Small town rhythm, familiar, good. I sat there with my coffee and thought about 1 year ago today. The pharmacy. The card declined. The confusion, the embarrassment, the beginning of awareness. If someone had told me then where I'd be now, sitting on my own porch in my own quiet, would I have believed it? Probably not. But here I was. 6:30. I drove to Rosie's Diner. The Wednesday coffee group was still going strong, had been for nearly a year now. Earl, Marcus, Pete, Doc, Johnny, Ray. They looked up when I approached, and Earl gestured to the empty chair they always left for me. "Stu, how's the week treating you?" "Can't complain. Grandkid's birthday this Saturday. Big party at the house. You're invited if you want to come." "Appreciate it. I'll think about it." I probably wouldn't go. I still wasn't ready for the chaos of family gatherings. But I appreciated the invite. That mattered. We ordered coffee, eggs, toast. $6.50, same as always. The conversation moved easily. The Steelers game, the upcoming election, someone's truck breaking down. Normal, grounding, exactly what I needed. When we finished, Marcus and I walked out together. Fishing Saturday. 8 a.m. See you there. 7:30 to 6 o'clock, I was underground. Mine, number 7. Seam depth, 950 feet. The same crew. Tommy fully recovered now from his broken leg. Big Pete, Ray, a few others. The work was the same. Drilling, loading coal, setting roof bolts. Coal dust in the air, noise at 95 decibels, the humid heat. But the feeling was different. When the shift ended and I drove home, I wasn't bracing for tension. I wasn't calculating how much money might be missing or what argument might be waiting. I was just going home, to my space, my peace. At 4:45, I stopped at Oakdale Pharmacy. Blood pressure medication, refill $47.50. The same pharmacy from 1 year ago. The same clerk behind the counter. She rang up the prescription and I handed her my card. A different card now, my individual account. The machine beeped. Approved. Have a good evening, Mr. Whitaker. You too. A small victory, but it still mattered. 1 year ago, that card had been declined. Today it went through without a hitch. Full circle. I arrived home at 6:15 and entered through the back door. The house was quiet, but it was the content kind of quiet. I made dinner, grilled chicken breast, roasted vegetables. I ate at the dining table with a Mozart piano concerto, playing softly and the newspaper spread in front of me. No rush. No one asking when I'd be done. Just me, my meal, my time. Before bed, I checked my bank account. Savings, $23,600. Debt zero. The last credit card had been paid off in July, and my credit score had climbed to 735. Financial stability had been fully restored. The last call from Cynthia had been 4 months ago, back in June. No calls since. Avery, no contact. I realized I hadn't checked my phone anxiously in months, hadn't monitored my accounts obsessively, hadn't braced for disaster. The trust had been rebuilt not in other people, but in myself. At 9, I finished for the night and returned to the house. I showered, changed into clean clothes, and picked up the book from my nightstand. Lonesome Dove. I read 30 pages, set the book down, turned off the light, and closed my eyes. Morning would come again. Mine work, coffee group, workshop projects, fishing with Marcus on Saturdays. Simple routines that added up to a life I'd chosen, not one that had been chosen for me. My hands, my life, my choice. Tomorrow I'd wake, make coffee, watch the sunrise from the porch swing, and that would be enough. If you've made it all the way to the end of this family story, I want to leave you with something honest. I'm not extraordinary. I'm not brave in some cinematic way. I'm a 63-year-old coal miner who spent nearly 4 decades 950 feet underground before I finally learned one simple word: no. It took me 38 years of hard labor and 1 painful year above ground to understand what truly matters. I didn't learn it quickly, but I learned it fully. This family story was never about revenge dominance or proving a point. It was about keeping your dignity when everything around you tries to take it. When I look back at those 18 months, I don't see a villain or even a victim. I see a man who confused love with duty. A man who believed being a provider meant endless sacrifice. A man who thought endurance was the same thing as strength. It isn't. If you take anything from this family story, let it be this: love without respect becomes erosion. Obligation without boundaries becomes exploitation. And silence in the face of family betrayal slowly destroys you from the inside out. People online called it dad revenge, but revenge suggests anger as the driving force. That wasn't it. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I didn't wake up plotting punishment. I wanted my peace back. I wanted to look at my bank account without fear. I wanted to come home without bracing for another argument. I wanted to breathe without feeling like my chest might cave in from stress. That isn't revenge. That's self-preservation. The hardest truth I had to accept was this: boundaries are not cruelty. Saying no is not abandonment. Walking away from repeated family betrayal is not selfish. It is sometimes the only way to survive with your integrity intact. When someone treats you like a resource instead of a person stepping back isn't harsh, it's necessary. Family, in my view, is not defined by shared walls or shared blood. It's defined by mutual respect, honesty, and care that goes both directions. A title alone doesn't create loyalty. And blood alone doesn't give anyone permission to bleed you dry. Family betrayal hurts precisely because it violates that expectation of safety. But recognizing it doesn't make you heartless. It makes you awake. If this family story speaks to you, if you've ever felt like someone's personal ATM, someone's emotional safety net, someone's backup plan, I hope you understand something clearly: your life has value beyond what you provide. Your work, your time, your health, your energy. They are not unlimited resources for others to extract. Maybe your situation looks different. Maybe it isn't about money. Maybe it's emotional manipulation. Maybe it's constant guilt. Maybe it's subtle disrespect disguised as that's just how families are. Whatever form it takes, family betrayal leaves the same mark: exhaustion. And exhaustion is not the same as love. If this family story has resonated with you in any way, I invite you to share your thoughts below. Not because I need validation, but because stories connect us. Sometimes reading someone else's comment reminds you that you're not alone in your own version of family betrayal. If you believe someone else could benefit from hearing this message about boundaries and self-respect, share this story with them. And if conversations like this matter to you, conversations about dignity, accountability, and finding peace after family betrayal, consider subscribing so we can continue them together. Thank you for staying until the end. Truly. Your time is something you can never get back, and the fact that you chose to spend it here means more than you realize. One final note: future stories shared here may include fictional elements crafted to illuminate real-world lessons. They are meant for reflection and growth. If this type of content isn't right for you, there are countless other voices out there that may better match what you're looking for. As for me, I'll keep choosing peace, I'll keep choosing clarity, and I'll keep choosing a life that belongs to me. Take care of yourself. Guard your dignity. And remember, you are worth more than what anyone can extract from you.
안녕수야? 아니? 뭐지? 나 잠깐만. 수야긴 수야인데 뭐였지? 나도 까먹었어. 미안. 언니, 그런 걸 다 견뎌야 돼. 내가 한번 물어보고 올게, 엄마한테. 밥 안 먹을 때 어떻게 해야 잘 먹는지. 수야 일상. 맞았어. 여긴가? 추워. 김밖에 안 먹어. 김이 맛있나 보네. 추워. 진짜 춥다 근데. 어이씨. 무슨 누가 봄 날씨라 했냐? 저요? 아니, 그냥 추워서 감싼 건데요? 왜 자꾸 예쁜 척 한다고 하는 거야? 예쁘게 태어난 건데. 잠깐만, 여기 아닌데? 어? 어디지? 지금 오늘 몇 요일이야? 아, 까비. 현금 없어.